Good evening, everybody. It is round number 4 of the 2025 ASR Supercars Championship, and for the first time in a couple of years, we have headed across Bass Strait and we are on the Apple Isle. That's right, we're down at Symmons Plains for the 4th round of the series. It's a 2-race weekend for the sides that have made the trip across the vast seas. And that means that there's 2 100-kilometre races to go for tonight's proceedings to determine who takes home the maximum points on offer of 300. But to add a little bit of a twist, Benjamin Roadie Rhodes, this is the first time in ASR history in the main game that we are going to undertake a 3-part qualifying series. That's right, very, very similar to what they do in real life. But for the first time in ASR, it is a thing. It wasn't too bad the last time we did it, and that was only 7 days ago, Rhodey, at the development series round at this very circuit.
Absolutely. Good evening to everyone watching along at home, or good morning, or good afternoon, or good whatever to wherever you are. And yeah, it's something different. We're bringing it in for 2 rounds this year, this being the first, and the next round actually being the next last. Basically, we're trying something a little different to open up some space essentially on track for the drivers in qualifying on the 2 shortest tracks on the calendar. And yeah, it's going to be very similar to F1. Thankfully, the more logical 2016 and a bit onwards 3-part qualifying session, rather than the one they trialled for, I think it was 2 rounds it might have been the start of 2016. Where they actually did knockout qualifying, which I remember somebody asking if we could try, and that's a bit too far down the gimmick train for me. But this will be good to see because we'll get to see some competitiveness early. More importantly, with 3 sessions, good chance if you feel like you've learned something in that first session, you can then implement it again in the second session. And crucially, well, it isn't a exclusive use of the track for the top 10 guys in terms of a shootout. 10 cars around Symmons Plains, they're going to have a pretty much a shootout length worth of track all for themselves if they're playing it right. But this track being the way it is, I don't think we're going to find them being too solo about it because, as I was saying before we started the broadcast, very much of a Monza feel to the way this track drives.
Yeah, it certainly is. It's a high-speed circuit. It's a narrow circuit. But the difference between like Monza and this circuit is space is at a premium. So the more cars on track, the more difficult it is to get your qualifying lap in. As it sits right now, there's 20 drivers that are ready to jump in and take to the track. So similar number to the development series that we saw 7 days ago when we were all running around. And it's a case of you drop the slowest 5. On that night, we dropped the slowest 5. So then we had 15 going into Q2. Then we dropped the next slowest 5. So then we had 10 going into Q3. And then they'd obviously set the grid entirely at the end of Q3 for the first of the races. And then the second race is a progressive grid from the race 1 results to race number 2. But as you said, Roddy, it's not quite take the form of a shootout, but with the only 10 cars on track in Q3, it will allow plenty of space for a lot of these drivers to find their room, find their rhythm, and set the best lap. Important to note as well, the first 2 segments will be 10 minutes long each. And then the third and final segment, Q3, is only 6 minutes. So a little bit of a different situation where in the first 2 sessions you can go out with a run plan, do a couple of laps, come in, change some tyres, go again. A little bit more compact in the third qualifying session. So 2 opportunities, I guess, to make qualifying a bit interesting. One, with more cars on track, means that you've got to make sure you get your lap in and get it over and done with and get a really good time on the board to avoid hitting the traffic. And then in Q3, shortening that session and putting the pressure on to deliver fairly early is going to be the orders of the business. It's been a couple of years since we've been here. So let's have a look at exactly where we are. As we said, we are at the southernmost circuit that we go to on the ASR Supercars Championship on the Apple Isle of Tasmania in the northern side, just not too far from Devonport. We find Symmons Plains, the 7-turn, predominantly turning left circuit, Roddy. So it's not a bit like NASCAR where you always go left at Symmons Plains, apart from one right-hand corner, you're virtually going, or 2 right-hand corners, you're virtually going left all the time.
You are, yeah. So Obviously, the big left comes from, or the big left comes from the smallest left, the slowest left in the 180-degree hairpin. But yeah, it's only just the right hand. Really, it's kind of a curve straight through one, and then the sweeping turn of turn number 3. But otherwise, yeah, a lot of left-hand corners, a lot of straights. So not different from NASCAR in that aspect as well. And like NASCAR, like Monza, and like we saw at Dev Series last week, if you're watching the broadcast that Daniel Cox and Will Devonish put on, which they're both racing here tonight, the premium or the priority for people in qualifying is going to be having a friend, or maybe having more than one friend, slipstream around this track, not unlike NASCAR, not unlike Monza, not unlike what we were there a couple of years ago in the international round. It will make the difference in qualifying. You can make up probably half a second versus clean air if you've got someone to follow around. But then comes the engagement of is there a plan in place? Is there a lead car? Is there a follow car? And how do you work around it when you're a single car team? The likes of the Kurt Stenbergs, who very much would like to have a slipstream because it puts him in a good position. And there's a few other guys on the grid obviously running solo, but these sort of things we'll come into. But real good little bull ring of a track. It's the technically equal shortest on the calendar. This feels smaller in a way, probably just due to the nature, the shape of the track, but also it feels a lot narrower in parts than you get at Barbagallo, and it definitely feels like I dare I say probably the only undersized circuit on the calendar.
Yeah, it is. It's a bit of an undersized circuit. I mean, when you look at it and you think, oh, is that only 2.4 kilometres long? Just remember, the next circuit we're going to, at Barbagallo, that's 2.4 kilometres long and a very similar lap time, but it's a very different layout compared to, Symmons Plains. This is short, sharp, narrow, fast, and has that really unusual hairpin, which is probably one of the most unusual corners in motorsport. And then you go to Barbagallo, where there's 3 straights, big long sweeping medium speed corners. The slowest corner on the circuit is the first corner. So again, very, very different sort of a thing, but same track distance and very similar in terms of lap time. So work that out.
Yeah, and that's funny how that plays out, and it's great because two on paper very similar tracks play it very differently. We're going to see very different styles of racing at Barbagallo, whereas here, similar level of foreplanning goes into creating a pass, but at the same time, Barbagallo is all about your ability to carry a momentum, whereas here it's about your ability to generate the momentum.
No, that's right. Okay, about to get ready to go in qualifying number 1. So. Be prepared. This is going to be something that, for the very first time, we've got to try and work out broadcast-wise for this. So we've actually had to do a little bit of adaptation, I think is probably the right word for it, in terms of how the game is structured, because it doesn't let you do qualifying 1, 2, or 3. So we've had to manipulate a few of the settings and the practice sessions to make this one work. But I'm rather looking forward to this, Rody.
Yeah, it'll be something different. And it'll be interesting to see how things play. Also, one thing I'm curious to see, we were trying to generate some banter and I suppose some animosity in so much as in Dev Series last week with trying to lock out the guy who had the first pit box. For Dev Series, it was Nathan Higginson, who's obviously not here tonight, but for Supercars, it's Will Devonish, who's trying to poke his nose in currently into a queue that takes up, I think, nearly every car is already out in the lane. He's trying to slip in ahead of Daryl Callahan. Unfortunately, Daryl's leaving him a spot, which I wouldn't do, Daryl, but he has done anyway. So Will is going to get out. This will be, actually 6th in the queue. As I said, there's a lot of cars, and we're being led by, I believe that is Rory Collins.
Yep, so Rory Collins is the first one out. You can see there's a big train of cars. There's no waiting at the altar here. Pretty much everybody's out, and the last person out is Curtis Igmanis, so that surprised me a little bit there that he was the last one out the door. So actually no, he wasn't, sorry, I apologise. It was Lockie Locke who was the last one out the door. But everybody on the track within the first few moments of qualifying, and there's a big gaggle of cars already up at the hairpin. A lot of people just parking the bus, just waiting for everybody to go by. Everyone's looking for this tow, Roadie. This is what you were on about before. Everybody's looking for this tow. It's going to be a really difficult situation. And then you've got the likes of Brenton Foley, who just wants to get on with it. So he's getting on with it, and he's out after Noah Turra. And I don't blame him for this, because Turra's been one of the ones at the pointy end of qualifying most of the rounds so far. He was at the pointy end again in practice, so it makes sense that if someone's going to punch a hole in the air for you, why not be the fastest car on the circuit to punch it right in front of you, about 20 or so metres off your front bumper bar.
Absolutely, yeah. The interesting thing and it's the gamble of trying to get a car that's about your sort of pace. Historically, Foley's maybe not quite been of a Noah Turra pace. We have seen little glimpses here and there, and from memory, he is someone that does like his way around Symmons Plains.
Oh,
but one big thing that will matter for the pair of them is the braking into the hairpin. Both are a little out of shape. They're Foley, I think, blocking the rears. Turra, I think, was just too deep and just picked up understeer on entry. So that's going to affect both of them. But what that has done is it V'd the corner slightly, so they might actually have higher VMAX at the end of the straight. It's just going to have cost them on the run out of and through the hairpin as a result.
Yeah,
we'll see how they go.
The limiting factor, of course, is going to be the gear ratio too, because you'll get to a point where you start to bounce on the limiter within a couple of 100 metres of the braking zone for the second to last corner, and Spec's gone for a bit of an adventure there. He just got a bit too adventurous off of the turn number 6 and has pulled into the pits there, so that ruins the lap for him. First time starting to come in with the 52s. Did I just see there's someone around at the hairpin? I think there might have been a little. There might have been a little incident up at the hairpin. It's cleared now. Yellow flag gone. McDonald, the fastest time so far in this session, 52 flat. So that's a fair way off of the 51 threes that we were seeing in practice. At this stage, he's looking set to go provisionally fastest here in this session. Reminder, it is. Oh, there goes. Another one of the cars. Who's that? That's Kurt Stenberg, who's gone for the same sort of adventure, and Brandon Dostal. They've both gone off at the last couple of corners. And Steele Allison provisionally goes P2. So that actually, he was usurped by Will Devonish, who was the quickest one there in that last. Was just running about 10 seconds ahead of him on the road, and put that first time in there, 51.49. And Turra only a tenth and a half behind, so I'd say at this stage those two are definitely safe as we get close to the halfway session in qualifying 1.
Oh yeah, with those gaps in play, especially the gap back to Steele Allison, who's surprisingly up there in third. But what it is showing as well early on is Tembo down in 10th. We've got Foley back still currently down in 14th. A few guys are struggling, and I think I'm starting to see what it is already. This is the first time these drivers had a chance to drive Gen 3 machinery, or at least the first race night, Gen 3 machinery around Symmons Plains.
That's right.
And I think what I'm finding is the bumps combined with the way these cars brake, they're pinching, and they're locking a whole lot more than they perhaps would otherwise be. These drivers have had 2 hours of official practice, and they've had time before that. But I get the impression, maybe with qualifying setup, the way they're trying to dial the tenths out of these cars, they're risking brake lockups, and that's what's probably catching them a lot, because every time there's a braking zone, even I'm watching Stenberg now, and Stenberg is one of the drivers I would assume to be pretty well dialed in. He's finding the exit curve everywhere, and not necessarily in the I'm finding pace way, it's the I'm only just making this corner way. And even then, just looking at him at the hairpin, he's just watched 2 cars in front, which were Ryan Smith and Brandon Dostal, both run wide as well. I think that's going to be a thing that's going to be a difference, or going to make a difference in qualifying, but definitely also in the race. We want them to keep an eye on.
Yeah, I agree. So Stenberg at the moment is in the safety area, but definitely looking to try and make some improvements here. Just not coming together for him at the moment. There's a few drivers that are still sitting in the drop zone that really need to, that I'm not expecting to be down there. Luke Speck was one. He's just vaulted himself up the order. He's up to 15th, so he's only just fractionally safe at the moment. So he needs to do a little bit more from where he is at the moment. He's actually just gone down to P16 because he's just been usurped. I think it might have been by Dane Mercado jumping up above him. Didn't quite get a picture on who it is. So this time for Speck's got a count, and he goes to 8th. So that's a bit more respectable at 52.2, and probably needs to put maybe another tenth or 2 in there to ensure his passage through to the next segment of qualifying. This is the big surprise, Rody. Bailey Hall, it was P5, now P6, but he's fighting at the pointy end, 52 flat, and it's been a while since we've said he's actually been qualifying fairly well. Seems to be on target so far, and his stablemate, who for this weekend is Scott Murrell, who won a race in Super 2 7 days ago at this very circuit, P3. So big surprise for the Vortex Racing team, fellas.
It is, yeah. The only thing I would say in it is the connection that links them both. Bailey has some speedway experience. Scott, through marshalling, has some speedway experience. I mean, this is the most speedway-esque track we've got on the calendar. I think Barbagallo may be a close second just with a lot of the bank corners, but yeah, this is again, you know, we talked about ovals, about Monza. Speedways are another sort of point and squirt, turn and then straight kind of track. Doing well, and I think from most of what I've seen as well, I'm not sure he's been improving in his subsequent runs. He went up pretty early, but he has been running around pretty quietly by himself. He is tacked on the back of Luke Speck at the moment, but he's a little bit far off the back, and Speck's actually just thrown away this current lap, so Bailey will get a run down the back straight. But yeah, doing well. Same with Murrell. So they're doing a really good job positioning themselves, and I don't know. It's almost like the rounds that Darren doesn't turn up, the teams seem to do a little better.
Yeah, let's. Well, he'll be watching this back later, no doubt. So that'll be an interesting comment when he reads that. You know, I guess you'll see him turn up at some point, Rhodey, and then go, "Yep, I've got to answer for myself here." So let's leave it at that one. Someone else is doing pretty well in a different livery for this weekend is Cam Rutledge. So he's up to P5, and that almost pretty much, I'd say, guarantees him safe passage through to the next segment. Currently, his best is a 52 flat as well. So you've actually got 3 guys on a 52 flat. Rutledge, Hall, and McDonald all within about, what's that? It's 1.5 thousandths. It's pretty close. 52.04, 52.05, and a 52.05. So very close between them. And only a tenth of a second behind, actually half a tenth of a second behind Steele Allison in 4th. So margins on the fringes of that top 10 are very tight at the moment. Rutledge comes across for the lap.
The positive thing as well, I'm actually seeing from some of these guys, although actually I just watched Cam come across the line, he's half a second off or running around in clean air. So I think what we're finding is, I'm looking at a lot of these cars now, they're running around in clean air, and as I said, they need to be in slipstream to be fighting good times. But also the argument is what I was leaning into is I've just seen...
It's a bit of a gaggle at the pit exit there.
Foley, that's what it was. Foley's popped up for 4th. I think maybe we're not seeing it quite as much as you would see in F1. I don't think we're seeing too much of the typical F1 gamesmanship of the guys that know they can make it through Q1, you know, leaving a little bit on the table, so they have something a little extra to pull out for 2 and 3. I think the only person who's potentially leaving something on the table at the moment is Stenberg, but that's it. He's just popped up for 4th. He's still half a second behind Will, but you know, it's a lot more of the sort of times you'd be seeing Stenberg doing. But I will say the likes of Murrell, the likes of Rutledge, the likes of Bailey Hall, I don't think they're, you know, banking on making huge humps. I don't think they're leaving anything on the table. I think those guys, especially Murrell up in 3rd, I think he's putting it all out right there in Q1. Which means to see how he goes on trying to bring that up and match it again for Q2 and hopefully to Q3. Yeah.
So the cut-off at the moment, so there's actually a fairly decent gap. So the car in P15 is Igmanis, and his best time is a 52.339. And then the next car that's in the queue is Daryl Callaghan, and he is nearly 3 tenths behind at a 52.6, and then you've got Cox on him on a 52.6, Steve Warwick 52.7, Dostal 52.7, and Collins 53.2, which is the outlier there. So they are the 5 in the bottom, in the drop zone at the moment, as I think you were right, Roddy. Some of these drivers are definitely going again because they definitely don't feel safe. If I were the likes of Luke Speck, Luke Newing, Curtis Igmanis, probably even Ryan Smith too, I don't feel safe on a 52.2 or a 52.1 right now. Locke, who's just gone back to the pit lane, he's also on a 52.1 and hasn't got not a lot of time left in all of this. Speck is one of the ones who I said is not safe. Well, there's someone off the road at the hairpin there as the clock goes 0. So wait and see how all this shakes out. So Daryl Callaghan is 17th and not improving, and he will exit Q1. Well, he's exiting stage, I don't know, what do we call, I'm not sure what we call that. That stage something or another. So he's exited there. Steve Warwick got a little toe up the back straight. Kirsty Mitchell, Steele Allison. Can he get it stopped for the second to last corner? He can. Is this going to be enough to lift him out of the drop zone? He's only one position outside here. It'll only take a small amount to get him lifted up in the order, and he misses out. He actually just falls a little bit short there. Only needed a half a tenth. He actually improved his lap time, did a 52.4, and Igmanis looks like he's going to survive this one by the skin of his teeth. and he is the car that is the last in the 15. So Rory Collins can't improve, Warwick couldn't improve, and Callaghan, Cox and Dostal threw it all away there. So they are the 5 that exit Q1. So the cut-off time there, a 52.339 for Egmanis, was the slowest of the 15 times that did make it through into qualifying 2. So what do you make of that, Rhodey? I look at the bottom 5, and it's such a hard thing to predict at the beginning of the night who you think is going to exit Q1 and Q2. I would have expected that, the margins would have been a little bit tighter. There would have been a bit more of a combative effort for that. It is a very difficult thing, I think, to pick in this talented field who would have exited. I mean, if you had asked me at the beginning of the night, I actually would have said it was possibly going to be the Vortex guys, because just based purely on the previous couple of rounds, where they have qualified. But I was genuinely surprised that they vaulted up the order and made it through.
Yeah, I get the impression that Collins either didn't get a good lap in or was stuck in clean air the entire run. But there are a few drivers, looking at that. Well, realistically, most of those drivers are probably expected to be a little high. But at the same time, I think what we've seen from the mid-pack is the least clearly defined that we've had in the history of ASR Supercars. There's not easily a point of drivers where you could count to, count 7 drivers and go, right, these will be the rest of the top 10 outside of, Devonish, Turrer, and Stenberg. It's not 10 drivers. You could look at 15. You could almost, on a good night, you could probably get close to 20 drivers, depending on who turns up. You can go, yes, this could be a top 10. So there's no easy numbers. There's no easy drivers to look at there and go, these guys should be quicker, because people ahead of them aren't necessarily out of position either. They're probably the one surprise, I'd say, just from the experience he's had, would be Liccardo, who made it through in 10th. But everyone else has had a good amount of seat time in these cars. Murrell's a bit of a throw, given that he's not a full-time entrant, but he, in between the last season, this season, he has some good running in these cars. That's I expect Doss a little bit quicker, but like a seat time maybe. Cox, it's a hard one to look at. The curious one will be where we go from here, but really the same thing. I can't look at the list of 15 and go, these will be the bottom 5. It really just comes down to who can get clean laps in and who can find themselves a buddy. And I think anyone who's watching Q1, and especially was paying attention maybe to the broadcast at the back end while they were waiting for Q2, would have probably picked up on, if they hadn't already, you need to have a slipstream buddy. And I think we're already starting to see some of those trains form.
Yeah, certainly are. So one of those is not one of those is Bailey Hall. He's gone out on his own. Devonish is the same, gone out on his own. And then, there's a few pairings that are starting to form. So I've just seen Mitchell Steele Allison. He seems to be trying to latch onto the back of Noah Turro. You've got Kurt Stenberg, who's actually being chased here by one of the, I think that's the new Luke Newing livery for this weekend, behind the King's Chicken Camaro. So that's one of the SES Shogun Camaros there. And then, right behind a big train, you've got 3 Mustangs. You've got Dane McDonald, Dane Liccardo, and Ryan Smith. In all honesty, I think that Smith, Liccardo and co are probably a bit too close together. You need to give yourself a little bit of wiggle room, especially up this drag here. Coming out of the hairpin, you do close that margin down and you start to get to a point where your sight of the braking markers can become a problem if you're a little bit too close, because this is quite a hard stop. In some cases, I think, Reddy, this stop at turn 6 is actually harder than the stop for turn number 4, the hairpin, because it's one of those, you've got to be turning and you've got to be, you've got to be trail braking into that corner, and you're braking for the better part of 260 odd kilometres an hour.
There's that, but I think the hardest part of it, which is at least for what we had in Dev Series last week, and I think probably it plays the same for these guys as well. Your braking point is in between brake markers, and the brake markers are just spaced out in just such a capacity. I think the desire a lot of people have had is, can we have like an intermediary between essentially the braking marker before we brake and braking marker after we brake, because it's somewhere in that gap. There's a pretty big gap when you're introduced to Ks an hour. There's a pretty big gap between braking markers, and your braking point is somewhere between those two. But you can't really work with it. So there's 200, there's 100, and then we hit the corner. I think what most drivers would like is a 150, because your braking point's probably about 140, 130, at least in a Dev Series car. It might be a little bit further back in Gen 3 due to the lesser grip these cars have for the following corner. But that's the big gamble, is they come into the hairpin. The rule, at least for Dev Series, is first brake marking board. You're a little bit past that, you're on the anchor straight away. Turn 6, somewhere out there that you cannot see is a brake marker that doesn't actually exist, that you have to get right every single time. And that's what makes turn 6 definitely probably the worst corner on this track for braking. Even worse, I'd say, than turn 2, which involves turning, coming over a hump, and then braking.
Yes. I agree with you on that front. Brent Foley, oh, he's gone a bit deep there. I was about to say we're about to go on board with the 074, and he's just gone rather deep at the hairpin, so that's kind of bottled that lap for him. So yeah, so this is the approach here. So leaving the hairpin, coming up to around 250 kilometres an hour now, and if you're in the slipstream, you'd be up to around 265. It's about 262 before he hits the brakes going into turn number 6, and so you think, you know, in the slipstream you're somewhere between 265 and 270 to make that one work. So throws that lap away, unfortunately, and it's going to have to go again. So halfway through this session now, have a look at the time. So Tara, Devonish, very close separator. Murrell not too far behind. So Scott Murrell is continuing his good qualifying form and is actually going out for a second bite of the cherry here. Stenberg and Ewing, so they've picked up their pace a little bit, so that's a bit more like it for Kurt Stenberg as Igmanis jumps him into 4th place. Rutledge in 7th, McDonald 8th, Speck and Steele Allison. So a couple of drivers that need to definitely get the skates on there. Brent Foley currently outside the safe zone, and he's only outside the safe zone by about 2/100ths of a second. So at the moment, Steele Allison's 52.196 is in play against Foley's 52.2. And Licata with the 52.2 as well. So too Locke with the 52.2. Smith the same, and Bailey Hall at 52.3. So very, very close. So I'm looking at the times here, Rody, and at a 50, you need to be doing even a 52.0 I don't think is safe, and that's going all the way up to Curtis Igmanis in 4th.
Yeah, I was just looking at that as well, and especially with those gaps that you've got between Ewing, Rutledge and McDonald, they're splitting hairs at that point, the gaps in between each of those drivers. But yeah, they're generally gaps all the way up to Igmanis. They're really, really tight. The only three I'd say that are really comfortably safe are the top 3 at the moment, which are Tara,
Devonish and Murrell.
Yes. Igmanis is in a good spot, but yeah, there's gaps. There's nothing in it. The biggest, well, no, that is the biggest gap in the entire grid. The rest of the field outside of that is covered by just over 0.2 of a second, which is nuts for what is 12 cars. But yeah, so it's going to come down to, did all those guys, and they probably did, looking at those gaps, did they all manage to set them in, I suppose, the desired air conditions? I'd assume that slipstream, but there are a few guys that seem to be stubbornly refusing the idea of slipstream, so maybe they don't think it's worthwhile. But yeah, I think you're going to see, if I was out there at this point and I was in the rest of those 12, if I hadn't already, I'd go find someone and pair up and do a couple of laps. You don't want to be as close as the guys were at the start of the session we talked about. That's probably about as close as you want to get, but you want to be close enough that you get the advantage down the back straight, but not so close that it stuffs at your braking, because you have to, effectively have to look through the windscreen of the car in front of you to figure out where you are on track. Yeah,
well, Rutledge just tried that with Scott Murrell and unfortunately come up about 1/10.5 too short on that lap then. So 3 minutes on the clock, he's got a chance to go again. Devonish has, I think, I can't remember, Devonish was actually second on the road, and he's now jumped ahead of Noah Tara as he's on his way to the last sequence of corners now. Igmanis is stuck in behind him at the moment. It's actually been jumped by Brent Foley, so Foley into a 51.8, so that sort of makes him safe. Tara,
I'd say at this point, Steele Allison's just gone up to 4th as well. He's safe now.
Yes, he's safe now with a 51.8 as well. So that means everyone in the top 5 has done a 51.8 or better. In the case of Foley, it's ever so close to a 51.9. As we have lost someone just in this session. I think it's actually Kurt Stenberg has has dropped out of this this session. Now I'm not sure if what time he was sitting on, Rody. We'll have to see if we can figure that one out. He may actually be in I'm not sure how this works when it comes to the times. We'll have to just double check a couple of things here. So Newing in 8th and about to commence another set of flying laps. So he's 52.097, Igmana's 52.075, Rutledge 52.099. So very tight. The margins, we're dealing in like millimetres here, and it comes to back end of Q2. Plenty of real estate out there on the circuit to make this happen. So top 5, actually spec now into a 52.9, sorry 51.9 I should say. So that launches him up the order. Stablemate to the car on screen here. I don't think Spec would probably feel safe at this point. On a 51.9, he probably thinks that he needs another half a tenth or so to really truly be safe.
I've just gone back. I haven't got the time, but I have got the relative to where Will Devlin is currently sitting. At the moment, Kurt Stenberg is sitting 8th. He's sitting just ahead of Newing, which means at the moment the last car in the 10 is actually going to be Rutledge. That said, if Newing, Rutledge, McDonald, Smith, if any other guys back from Newing, including Newing, can improve ahead of where Newing is, more or less, they'll effectively push Kurt out of the 10.
Yep, so we're waiting to see how that all unfolds here. Liccardo's actually on a half-decent lap at the moment. He's up on his PB coming into the last sequence of corners, and he will get another bite at the cherry if he's got enough tyres to go again. He's getting a bit of a good suck here from the back of the second, the SES Shogun Camaros. Doesn't find the time in that last sector, though, but he might get a little bit of a help and assistance here from, I think that is Luke Speck just ahead of him on this run down the chute to the hairpin. So we'll stay with this and just see what the time is at Sector 1. It's in the game. At the moment where he is right now, that would elevate him a little bit. It would get him a lot closer to the back of his stablemate Ryan Smith. He definitely needs to find a bit more time in this second sector. So let's see what the marker is. Smith's actually not too far up the road from him here, and he's lost a bit more time. So he had a poor exit out of the hairpin. This is where he lost all the time on that last lap. Clock has gone 0. Keeping an eye on things here. Ryan Smith, his teammate, in 11th, currently just ahead of him. Does not improve, so he stays 11th. Liccardo stays 12th. McDonald, 10th. And Rutledge in the sheds in 9th. And the only other person that's on the circuit is Bailey Hall, and he's definitely not improving at the final corner. Now, I just can't remember off the top of my head here what the rule actually was if you dropped out in Q1 or Q2, given officially it's a practice session. You're not allowed to get back in. So we'll have to just wait and see on the other side of this how will this unfold. As it sits right now, we definitely know the top 8 that's in, and then Rutledge and McDonald are the last 2. I'm just going to wait to seek some confirmation here. Rody, you might have to jump off very quickly and just go and double check what the deal is.
As things sit, thanks to Rutledge actually making the math easier, Will hasn't improved on the time he set when Stenberg was last in the session. Stenberg, the gap from Stenberg back was 0.739, which puts him in position number 8, which moves. Actually, he's just come back in. He's probably waited to check that.
Yeah, so now correct.
So he has come back in, and obviously has locked it back in officially now. So that moves Newing down to 9th, Rutledge down to 10th, and unfortunately pushes McDonald out to 11th.
Yep, so there you go. So Stenberg's time at a 52.090 was just good enough, because you look at Stenberg, Newing, and Rutledge, they were separated by 9 thousandths of a second. That's how tight that was, and they were only 2 thousandths of a second faster than McDonald. So incredibly tight margins. So on to Q3 we go. So very, very tight session there. So McDonald, Smith, Liccardo, Locke, and Bailey Hall are the ones who miss out on the session. Now, this is the interesting one. So this one is only a 6-minute session. There's only 10 cars on track, and 6 minutes is all that's on the clock.
Yeah, it's interesting to see how they plan their ways around this one. They're effectively going to get probably, if they were to go straight out and just pan the laps out, they'd get probably 4 or 5 laps in the time allotted to them. But very rarely do we see drivers into the field at least run their 5 laps in a row. So we're probably going to see a split up of it could be single lap pushes. I'd expect probably a 2-lap push, and then maybe come in at midpoint and go out for another 2-lap push. We'll see how it plays out.
Yep. All right, short, sharp. This will be interesting just to see how the drivers actually handle this very small session. Very much a bit of foreign territory here because it's such a short session. Normally, all qualifying sessions are 10 minutes, save for special events where, like we've had in the past with Bathurst, where it might be a bit longer to allow the length of the lap and so on and so forth. We are going to Bathurst as one of the rounds this year, so wouldn't be surprised to see that session extended to, say, 15 or 20 minutes, just purely because it's a longer endurance event, and the lap time required to just get around on the outlap on its own right is a bit of a concern, and only really allows for 1 or 2 proper bites at the cherry on a 10-minute run. So into the opening series of laps. I think as it sits right now, it's probably a race in 2 for pole position here, Rody. Probably Devonish and Turra, probably the class to beat, but doesn't preclude them from making a mistake. They've nailed the first 2 segments of qualifying. They've still got to nail this one as well.
Yeah, one thing I'm seeing again, so Turra out there by himself. He's got Scott Murrell tucked in right behind him, though, pretty much a perfect gap for Murrell. So I'm interested to see what that does from Murrell's point of view. The other one as well, Devonish, I'm pretty sure I've caught him as I've been cutting through.
On his own.
I'm pretty sure he's tucked out there by himself as well. He's got nobody around him. The next car behind him is Cam Rutledge, but he's, if anything, he's going to get the wisp of slipstream. He's actually, Rutledge is back there giving Egmanis a tow. So weird, at least based on experience in Dev Series, the slipstream was where you need to go. But maybe these cars, maybe just with the less area that they've got, maybe the slipstream isn't as much of a benefit for these cars. Maybe the guys at the front are actually making up that balance by being able to see exactly where they are on track, find exactly where they need to brake, rather than having to do a bit of guesswork because somebody's rear bumper is blocking most divisions.
Right, first times are in, and as they sit right now, Devonish from Steele Allison, Turra a little bit slow. Newing, Foley and Speck, and then Murrell, Egmanis, Stenberg and Rutledge. So look at Cam's times, probably definitely a bit slower than what he's done in qualifying 1 and 2 so far. Just noticed Stenberg was run a bit deep at the hairpin on this lap, and he was actually up at the first sector marker, but probably went a little bit beyond the braking zone there, and he's going to come out for another run. So that's actually not a bad time for him to have that little off, because he'll get some fresh tyres and he'll get out and get a few more laps under his belt. The SES Camaro's running line astern here behind Brett Foley. Newing with a slight improvement on the time, 0.004. No improvement on the time, but not the place. Foley improved, I think, his time as well. Moved up. Oh, there we go. Scott Murrell jumps up to P2. So provisional front row as it sits right now for Scott Murrell. Very handy time, I should say, in the in 51 and at 51.6. Probably fully expected to jump up over Noah Turra. I'm actually surprised that Turra, who's still running ahead of him at the moment, didn't gain more significant ground.
Yeah, that was interesting. It's not a surprise necessarily that Murrell's managed to go quicker than Turra. In fact, he's spent the entire run behind him because within that slipstream, and clearly that's how Murrell wants to do this, you have a bit of a rubber band effect where you can back off a little bit, start your lap, and then build that gap back up with the slipstream without actually passing the car in front, and obviously then be quicker than that car that's just been eventually held a consistent time. But yeah, I'm surprised that oh well, actually,
Turra
all I do is keep talking and wait, because Turra's without maybe having Turra in the, maybe Murrell, sorry, in the mirror was a bit of a distraction because he's now gone just under a tenth quicker. So he's not quite got the wheel, but yeah, something for those 2 cars. Maybe it's a setup thing, but they do not need slipstream when you look at the 2 cars behind, or at least the car behind. And Murrell spent their entire first run tucked right up behind Turra's rear wing.
Certainly did. Minute 40 left on the clock. So for Stenberg, there's 2 more laps for him. For everybody else, I think it'll pretty much be 1. Devonish might be able to get another one in here as well. It might be 2 more on the clock. Spec, it's slight improvement there for him coming into Sector 1, just keeping an eye on some things here. So if he keeps that up, that actually would be enough to vault him up the order. There's been an improvement in the time there for Brent Foley's jumped another spot. Oh, well, he's got COVID apparently, and didn't. What do we say about COVID when it comes to sim racing, Brody? Doesn't it make you faster?
Apparently, yeah, there's no hard evidence to prove it, but every time drivers come into an ASR race weekend with COVID, they've actually gone quicker than they've gone without it. So, this is tracking to support those odds. I think only one driver previously has had COVID and not improved. So, I'm not saying I'm not just encouraging you to go and get it, of course, but it just seems to happen that maybe it helps concentration. I do not know. But Foley currently sitting in fourth. He's got a good little gap over Steele Allison, and he's going to go for another run here. That one was an improvement. He's got one more run at this, as does Stenberg, who's just ahead.
As does this man on screen here, Noah Tara, who's just gone and purpled the first sector, and then he's actually been immediately surpassed in the first sector by Will Devenish. So nip and tuck between the two Mustangs at the moment. Tara tracking at the stage like he will be provisionally on the front row, searching for pole, hoping that Devenish will have a little bit of a stumble on this lap because it's looking pretty good at the very, very even in the middle sector. Tara comes up a little bit short. He will get another lap. He did get across for another start to this lap, and I think whoever was behind him quite didn't. Steele Allison pulls the pin. So too does Egmanis. Devenish has pulled the pin as well. Murrell into the final corner, and he's had a big tank slapper of a moment, so he's not going anywhere. He's not advancing further up the order. Foley is coming around the final corner there. He's just been usurped at the last minute by Kurt Stenberg, who goes up to P4 onto the second row of the grid. So Kurt pulls something out of nothing and moves up the order. Tara is still on a flying lap here. He's looking good up to the second sector. This is looking 2 green sectors. It's not purple, but it's an improvement overall. It's the fastest time so far to the second sector. Is there anything left in the tank? Can he snatch the pole? He can't snatch the pole. He comes up 28 thousandths of a second short of the pole position. Threw everything at it there. Devenish just a little bit too strong in the final sector.
Yeah, and he had all the opportunity in the world there. Will was following him obviously in the lap prior, and he, I think, did the same, very similar thing to Murrell, and probably got a little bit of rear locking into turn 6 and ended up trying the tyre barrier. Murrell, that's 2 for 2 in so much as he did this a week ago under safety car of all places to run it wide at the second last corner. Was very lucky not to lose a spot doing so. But in the end, not by as much as it was a minute or so ago, but Devenish does still hold on to pole. Tara second. Murrell third. Look, he's been doing pretty well. Obviously, tonight's a bit of a special occasion, it would seem, based on pace. But generally speaking, he'd almost do himself a good service by committing full time to the season, to the series. But I think a few drivers would miss out on, or would not want to miss out on the opportunity to have him come and score points for their team. And then Stenberg up to fourth. Good little run in the end there for him. Foley still fifth. So that's amongst sort of the best pace we've yet to see. I think I'd only put him one spot higher, and that's only by virtue of Murrell being as high as he is. Steele Allison sixth, also good run for Steele Allison. Speck and Ewing seventh and eighth. It's good to see SES team Luke doing well. And then Egmanis and Rutledge. Egmanis sort of about where we've seen him, but good to see him up in the 10. And then Rutledge as well, who's one of a few running an alternate livery. He's running a very special livery tonight, which we'll talk about a little bit later, but good to see him in the 10 as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So we're going to have the usual 5-minute warm-up here, which is actually timely because it gives us a chance to just sort the grid out here. So I'm going to hand this one to you, Rody, while we have a look at the drivers' standings after the first 3 rounds of competition. And it might look like Kurt Stenberg does have a handy lead at the top of the standings at the moment, but Will Devenish did miss the last round at Topor, and of course the drop round hasn't been factored into play yet. So still a few things to figure out here, but on the whole, still a very competitive season, even after the first 3 rounds of competition.
Absolutely, and most crucially for where Kurt's sitting, although it doesn't look like it, he did say at the start of the year that he wasn't going to commit to a full season. He has turned up for the first 4 rounds. To be fair, round 1 was because he was trying to beat Luke's all-time wins record. Round 2, same thing, because he didn't manage to pick up the second win in race 2 at Sydney, and then avoided the wins entirely at Surfers. He then took it out, and he's now ahead thanks to Taupo. But we know he's got commitments later in the year that are going to turn up, so it's there's no guarantees of his finishing position. The other thing as well is he's not a full round clear of Will. He's 202 points clear, full round is 300 points. So even without a drop round, Will is still reasonably within the math of it. Will's back there in second. He's then got Luke Speck for company, which is a bit of a surprise, but Speck's really been the most consistent of the rest of the drivers. He did pick up a 20th at Sydney, but otherwise he's been there or abouts in the top 10. He picked up a pair of thirds at Surfers. That was a really good run for him. Lockie Lock in fourth, also a really good run for Lock, and actually he's benefited from, he's actually been the better performing of the two drivers in that Sarah Amped Up racing team, but Tara's down in 8th thanks to a pair of DNSs at Surfers. Igmanus 5th, Cox 6th, obviously Igmanus just in the 10. Cox will be starting down the back for this one. Foley in 7th, that's going to probably improve a little more. He's coming off of a pair of thirds at Taupo, so a good runner pace for him. As I mentioned, Tara in 8th, Dave McDonald in 9th, and Darren Logden, who won't be here tonight, he's in 10th. So in terms of who's going to pull up from then Darren and Logden, the next page has got Dostal in 11th, he's here tonight. Still Allison in 12th, just behind. He's probably going to pull up past Logden as well. Rutledge in 13th, well, the top 10's a good place to start. Ryan Smith in 14th, also running a, we'll call it a special livery.
Yeah, we'll talk more about that later.
I know we want to throw some thoughts around on that one. 15th is Newing. He's also turned up tonight. Callahan, Steve Warwick. 18th is Hans Brunswick, who we did hope we'd see tonight. There were a few guys after his performance, 3 top 10s on what was his first time back in the car in 2 years, I think it was. A couple of people were wanting him for a fill-in spot, but he's a very popular man, and I believe he's doing other things tonight, unfortunately. And then Aidan Williams also, we haven't seen him since Sydney Motorsport Park. He's back there in 19th. And we got a tie for 20th between Palfrey, who's a guest driver, not here tonight, and Phil Boak, who is not a guest driver, but is also not here tonight.
Yep, there you go.
But there's still some good competition there, especially that there'll be some good movements on who can break into that 10, because there are a few drivers mathematically that are thereabouts in the right standings. It's what is it? It's just over 10 points between from Dostal down to Rutledge, so 11th through 13th.
Yeah, so I'm expecting to see some advancement from Dostal, Steele Allison, Rutledge, Smith, Newing, and Callaghan. They're the 6 that I'm sort of looking at tonight going, they'll definitely move up the order. They will definitely or be in line to move ahead of Darren Lognan if they can have a nice clean night. Realistically, it's probably only maybe 3 or 4 of those 6. But I'm expecting them to definitely make some moves tonight and put some good points on the board while one of the Vortex Racing team members is not here. Over the page we go. Let's have a look at the team standings. It's a CRE 1, 2, 3 CRE affiliated teams filling the top 3 spots at the moment. 2 of them have cracked the 1,000-point mark already after 3 races. PBF Race Engineering only down to 1 car tonight, so points will be a bit premium there. A couple from the SCS Shogun, they'll be both of them are here tonight. The only single car team on the standings there, Anticoal Autosport with 790, of course that's Kurt Stenberg, and then balanced out by the 2 Luke McHugh racing teams, the Vortex Racing Mustangs, and then the PBF by SES, which has been that satellite team operation all weekend to this weekend and also throughout the season so far. So that's how everything sort of shakes out there. So not too far away from heading into the race trim here. Good to see Leonard Grossel's joined us as well. He was in the midst of fixing a sim rig issue, so he missed out on qualifying. And I'm not sure how much practice he's actually had around this circuit, but we'll soon find out. He's come close to a couple of victories over in his time in ASR, but he's going to struggle a little bit to drive through from the back. So this will be important for him to just work through, get a good qualifying position. A good starting position rather for race number 2, I think. So just play some smart strategy, I think will probably be the order of the day for him. And then that will be a good starting solid position for him for the second race of the night. So remember, we said it is a case of where you finish this first race is where you start the second one for the night, and the first race of the night is about to start now. Roddy, I also forgot to mention that this is a little bit of a unique situation for Symmons Plains. Not only is it a three-part qualifying night, which we just concluded, but these are probably some of the longest races around Symmons Plains that we have actually done in quite some time.
Yeah, I'd quite some time, and I'd almost be inclined. I think the only time I'd inclined to say we've been longer would be, I'm pretty sure in 2018 we only ran single race rounds. So by default, that basically guarantees that would have been a longer race. But I think since then, yeah, definitely the longest race. It's the closest. It's not an enduro. It's only going to be the best part of probably 45 minutes, which is pretty regular for a 2-race night in terms of race length. But it's going to feel like it. Your laps are over in just over a minute. It's going to feel like a higher kart enduro for some of these drivers. Although that said, I'm not sure too many of them actually experienced one. But it's like that experience with indoor tracks with it flattened up in 20 seconds. It's going to be a long one. And starting from pole for race number 1 is Will Devonish, the first of the 2 Series Engineering Mustangs. Alongside him is Noah Turra, the first of the Series Amped Up Racing Mustangs. Scott Burrell up in third for Vortex Racing Team as a fill-in. They'll be pretty happy with his performance. I know Darren will be pretty pleased to see his car up at the 20 end. With Kurt Stenberg in fourth for Antical Autosport, still running with the Kingsley's Chicken backing. Fifth is Brenton Foley, the lead and only PBF Engineering car here tonight, with Mitchell Steele Allison in sixth. Good run for him in the PBF by SES number 24. Seventh is Luke Speck, the lead of the 2 SES Shogun cars, with his teammates Luke Ewing alongside in the Kraken, it's Grum brand, backing him for this round. Igmanus in ninth with a special Lilo and Stitch car. We'll talk about that one later. And Igmanus in his special livery as well, back in 10th. 11th is Dan McDonald in that pink, this is his car in his pink McQ race number 59. Ryan Smith in his livery for tonight in 12th. Dane Liccardo in 13th. Good to see Dane back on the grid as well, which makes for 2 SES Spot Division cars out here tonight. Lockie Lock is in 14th, a bit of work for him to get the Series Amped Up Racing 237 up the grid. With Bailey Hall in 15th, a bit of a surprise given his pace in practice. 16th is Steve Warwick, the leader of the 2 Renshaw PBF Blackshaws cars. 17th is Daryl Callahan. 18th is Daniel Cox in the Sticker Bomb Kamikaze car. 19th is Brandon Dostal. Good to see him on the grid tonight. Unfortunately, no Ethan Knight. And Grossel is in 20th, which suggests that we're missing someone. We're going anyway.
We certainly are. It is Rory Collins, I think, who is missing for this one. So let's get this underway. Race 8 of the championship. First race of the Tasmania 200. And off we go towards turn number 1. And it's a battle between the inter-teammates there. And it comes out in favour of Noah Turra. So he goes through to lead this one as they all run under the bridge for the first time. There's already a good move there. Ryan Smith has actually made some ground. Kurt Stenberg already throwing down the gauntlet here in the early going to Will Devonish, who plays defence on the run to the hairpin on the opening lap. Murrell not letting Stenberg get away though. A bit further back in the pack. Here we go. Liccardo staying where he started, but you can see his teammate Ryan Smith has gained at least 4 spots at the start here. So great launch by the number 60 from the SES Spud division. So he's the biggest mover so far on the opening lap.
Yeah, I think that first couple of corners interaction between the adjacent teammates of Turra and Devonish. Turra was very much a possibility of turning himself off of Will's nose there. I think Will was playing it smart. It's a 42-lap race. Will knows that. He wasn't worth, especially with a teammate, wasn't worth turning him. But very cheeky sort of self-clear from Turra, but it's enabled him to get just a little bit of wiggle room over Devonish and Stenberg. And those 3 are starting to break away with Scott Murrell now the lead of the rest of the train in 4th.
Yeah, so Murrell down 1 spot. Steele Allison and Brenton Foley, who's lost an extra spot in this as well, has tacked onto the back of this group. A bit of aggressive acceleration there for Murrell out of the first the hairpin there as he tries to drag race up the back chute here. And just confirming, it looks like it has indeed been some sort of an issue for Brad.
Stenberg.
Oi, so
I think the issue for Stenberg as well, potentially.
yeah, so Stenberger's had some sort of a drama. He's dropped out of contention here, has he? So yes, he's some sort of, or it might be a timing glitch of some nature because he's down the order in 20th place. Just looking to see what happened there. No, he's actually, I think this might be some sort of a little timing glitch. He's reappeared again and the timing has reset itself. So that's all okay. I was about to say, confirming that it looks like there was some sort of a hardware issue for Rory Collins. So he's had to miss this one. So he's just started back for the next one. So Stenberg back in position here. Luke Newing has moved up a spot and spec in behind him. And then comes Ryan Smith, who's actually made his way up to 9th. So he started 13th. He's moved all the way up the field there. And Igmanis is the big loser out of all of this. So he started, I think he was about 9th on the running order, and he's now down to 13th. So effectively, him and Smith have swapped places at the start here.
They have, yeah. So it's a good little breakout. We're starting to see as well. They're starting to break out into sort of a good little train as well. Smith has actually managed to break away from that pack of the rest of the 10, which is now being led by Dan McDonald. But they're out by second and a half. Some of that is probably back into the back of the likes of Newing and Spec, which are running a little 3-car train now amongst the 3 of them. But also there's good battling, and I've just seen Dan McDonald's drop back, so I'm not sure whether there was contact or not, whether there was a wobble, but what that has done is promoted Licata up to 10th and Igmanis up to 11th. So Igmanis a bit of recovery from having started in the 10th, he's now back to 11th.
So having a look here, there's some different lines already starting to be taken through the hairpin. There's drivers V'ing off the corner. There's drivers taking a nice sort of shallow line. There's drivers also taking the mid-track line, which I actually think the mid-track line is probably the one to take. It was certainly the one that everybody was using in Dev Series 7 days ago, and seemed to have a good bit of purchase getting around that sort of middle rut in the hairpin, not going too deep and too wide, because if you just misjudge your braking a little bit, you end up running too wide and clipping the fence, and then you don't go anywhere. So as one from our days in ARW would say, Brody, it's you've got to leave that margin for error.
Yes.
And I think if you leave the margin for error, so let's just see what happens here. So Newing goes a little there. See that mid-track line there's probably the one to make sure you get a nice little slingshot off the corner there. Any sort of real, you're going a bit deeper than that, you're sort of running into a little bit of trouble. And whatever the issue was for Damon McDonald, he is out of this one. And Igmanis has started sinking like a stone as well now. So just looking to see what's happened to him. And yeah, I'm wondering maybe if he's become tangled up with the number 59 at some point, because he has fallen right to the tail of the train now.
No, I just to confirm those two. McDonald, it looks like an engine issue on the downshift into the hairpin. That was the lap prior. Igmanis was actually in a battle with Licata, and as I said, the bumps and the braking would lead to mistakes. It looks like they both ran deep trying to battle, and unfortunately, just due to Igmanis being on the inside, basically when Dane went to turn in, it kind of straightened Igmanis' car out, and then ended up that Igmanis ended up in the gravel, and Licata just about avoided it, so that's what dropped him in the back of the train. That said, he's in a good spot now. He's up behind Cox, and he's got a pretty consistent train all the way up to, I think, Bailey Hall, so he's got a couple of spots he can gain here, and actually Daryl Callahan's just dropped back as well.
Yeah, so speaking of Licata, he's actually just managed to get past Rutledge, so that puts him into the top 10. So now trying to set out in the wheel tracks of his teammate, who's some 6 seconds up the road, or actually more than that, 8 seconds up the road, in fact. So Smith not wasting any time getting on with proceeding, so trying to leave Rutledge here to defend off Locke and Dostal. Dostal's actually had a reasonable start after starting on the back row and up to P13, so that might put him in a nice position for when it comes to the pit stop sequence, and if he can, maybe look at making a bit of a gain there. Yellow flag up at the hairpin. Oh, and that's Foley. So Brent Foley off the road at the hairpin, and looks like that one possibly has been on its own. The old replay here will reveal all, with of course thanks to the paint doctor. Let's have a look at what happened to the 074. And yep, indeed, Doodley, it is on his own, and yep, pinches the brake there, a bit far into the runoff zone, and thankfully the gravel a little bit forgiving, and off he goes. So that's cost him 4 spots.
Yeah, he's now a little intermediary buffer between the top 8 now, obviously backed by Ryan Smith, and then Liccardo, who's the head of the train, from 10th. I've just noticed as well, we lost Warwick as well. There was a bit of contact with another car on the run through into turn 2, and potentially as well for Warwick, I think maybe a little bigger factor. Might have done the same thing as McDonald and popped an engine. So surprising that we're seeing that many engines go, if that is the case, especially this early into the race. Maybe to do with the gearing. We've already mentioned that they do run a bit more up towards the limiter than they usually be running in a given round. But it's all in braking zones, so maybe it's just drivers forgetting how high the car's been sitting and just forgetting they need to take a second before they down change to avoid popping the revs too high. But if that is the case, 2 drivers are already out due to engine issues.
Absolutely, yeah, that's a very important point. If you're sitting in the wheel tracks like a lot of these drivers are in the draft train, then you're getting up towards that pointy end of north of 260 k's an hour, and the gear ratio that you're running can be a problem. You start to buzz the limiter a bit too much, and then you go for the down change a little bit too earlier than you ideally should, and you end up doing motor, or you do that too many times, you eventually do motor. Speaking of Steve Warwick, his teammates actually not done too badly, starting from the rear of the grid. He picked up 1 spot because of the sim issue for Rory Collins, and has made another further 5 places since then. So this is actually looking pretty good for him. I think he's just quite content to sit here in this train and wait for the pit stop sequences to start playing out. And if you're Dane Liccardo, you're about to lose a position to Leonard Grossel, and there you go.
Yeah, I'm not sure what happened with Dane there. He was pretty comfortably ahead of rightly so. He just ran a little too deep all by himself to bowl himself off there. So he's fallen to the back of this train now, and he's actually fallen in a position now where he's slotted into a gap between Grossel and Igmanis, who's working his way back up to the field now.
Yeah. Stenberg's lost a position to Scott Murrell in all of this as well. Now he's just trying to fight the pack for that one on the inside here. Oh, Stenberg a little bit too deep at turn number 6, and there was a little bit of contact there. That actually allows Steele Allison to get up the inside of the number 31 here, going up onto the front chute. But probably a wise decision there, just to think better of it, pull back in and wait for another go here. Still a long way to go in this race. Mirror cap already gone flying. There's going to be plenty of those here. The old wall camera's going to get a bit of a workout, I think, this weekend. So Stenberg back up to 3rd, but he's whatever has happened, he has lost the advantage that he had when he was running in the front group of 3 cars, quite considerably actually. Haven't had a chance to look at the lap times. He's got his hands full here, Scott Murrell. This is not what I was expecting, Rhodey.
No, this wasn't. I don't think this is generally on my bingo card for this year, that I'd be seeing Kurt Stenberg and Scott Murrell having a very genuine fight for position.
And this is good on Murrell's deep, and that's the end of that.
Just gone for an over-under that didn't quite work, or an under-over technically, and dipping himself into the runoff. He's kept it on the curve, thankfully, but had to get out of the throttle, so that's dropped him back behind Steele Allison. Now it's his turn to try and pass the number 1.
Yeah, he was playing some defence there. He was attacking defence at the same time, defending on the inside to turn 6. It was just a little bit too deep. Kurt was quite aware of that, and then got back on the cutback, so very nice job there. Brandon Dostal's actually moved through to 10th place after all this, so there's been a bit more swapping and changing. Oh, and I've just seen, I think it's Liccardo going for a bit of a wild ride across the gravel trap, approaching turn number 1. Oh, and just somehow manages to avoid the Lilo and Stitch car belonging to Igmanis, and will he actually be able to get this stop for the inside here? A little bit of rubbing and contact, and that battle's going to continue on for a little bit. We'll go and have a look at this on the old replay, because this was a bit of an interesting moment for Liccardo. In actual fact, Grossel got shunted out wide in all of this little exchange in the back, so that kind of ruins his situation. Oh, and he was well wide off the braking zone there. Just plunged straight through, destroys an LSN sign. And in actual fact, oh, that was super tight there, going into turn number, the curve of turn 3.
Yeah, he kind of did, I think, about as best he could with it. It's a tricky spot to rejoin with the speed he was carrying. Just about left enough room for the 51. That said, I imagine that would have peaked Curtis's heart rate a little bit there, but he's come back down. Actually, he was lucky on the following run to the hairpin. Igmanis pinched inside front as he turned in, which pushed the car just a little bit wide.
And that's a bit deep.
Igmanis has just been pushed wide by Liccardo, so he's checked up at the exit of the hairpin to redress that one. was not what he was able to do there.
Yep, no, he's waiting for Egmanis to go through, and yep, that's a significant time loss, so wouldn't be surprised to see the stewards have a little chin wag after that one. But yeah, that we're on board with the roof cam when that happened, and yeah, that was definitely a day late and $1 short in the braking zone. So that order has been shuffled now a little bit with all of that. Grossell finds himself back down in 15th, having been punted wide there.
I've just noticed we've lost, actually, this time, Stenberg.
Legitimately, Stenberg has gone this time, yes. So some sort of another issue for him. So disappointing. We'll be waiting to see how that one works. So that does move a few drivers around in all the order. So Murrell now 4th, and Speck wide at the final corner. So common issue here at Symmons Plains, the heavy braking zone into turn number 6. So that allows Smith and his teammate Ewing to get through. We need to start talking about the pit stops, Rody, because this is a bit of a difficult race to manage, because of course it is the soft tyres. So we bring up our PCS, or Pallet Control Solutions Race Facts. The soft tyre is the only tyre in play this weekend, so you can't make it on a single set of tyres. You do have to stop. You actually need to put fuel in as well, so pit stops are a fait accompli here. Lots of laps, so for the short track, it becomes pretty much almost like a NASCAR circuit, where they're just going round and round and round and round and round. It's going to be the better part of 45 minutes to 46 minutes of sort of non-stop driving. The big thing for me here is the crossover lap. So let's have a look at the development series when we had that. They had a couple of laps less, and they still had to try and find an ideal spot to stop. They did 38 laps. Obviously the halfway mark of that is 19 laps. So then you have to work out, okay, can I make it to halfway? Can I maybe get beyond halfway a little bit here? And in that case, can I then give myself a little bit of a better tyre in the closing stages of the second half of the race? So where people stop for overcuts and undercuts and all sorts of cuts is going to be interesting, because we're starting to get to around lap 20-ish is where we're probably going to ideally start to see the first of the stoppers. Yeah,
well, an interesting one to keep an eye on in all of this, just based on some of the advice I was passed by him about a week ago. Interesting the validity of the advice I was given that he was, I think it was 24 drinks deep at the time. Apparently the beer was really good and it was really cheap. But Luke Speck, one of the things I was passed on was the undercut was pretty strong, and it was good. I think I got most of my passing done last week thanks to undercuts. But yeah, the interesting bit was to see how well the cars last. I know that his recommendation before he realised the soft tyre only was that you could run a no stop with a bit of fuel conservation in Dev Series last week. The problem was you were running soft tyres, but if they were hard, you could make it work. Probably find something similar. I think the fuel tanks are slightly bigger in these cars, so fuel you could technically weasel a little bit out if you needed to. The other thing I think you'll find as well, at least for the guys that have come across from Dev Series or paid attention last week, they will probably allow a little bit more in their tank than they otherwise would, because Dev Series did feature a late race safety car in race 2 that put a few drivers, well, they were safe, but if it had gone one lap longer, they would have been in trouble, and I think they included the race winner.
Yes.
So a few of those will be paying attention. I've just seen the COG come up for Specky, so he's at least planning a pit stop, but doesn't guarantee he's going to be in. He's just being passed by Foley in the last lap or so. But yeah, about now we'll start to see, and if lap 20 is the ideal pit point to split down the middle, I wouldn't be surprised if we're going to see people in the next lap or two trying to go for an undercut.
Yeah, I think if you're going for an undercut, you're in on lap 20 if you're right behind somebody. But, I would originally start to plan for splitting it down the middle to start with. So that's your ideal aiming point. If you've got a situation where you think your tyre wear's pretty good and you could maybe afford to come in a lap earlier, especially if there's an undercut involved, then that's what you do. And if you Luke Speck, that's precisely what you're doing. And he's coming into the lane. So he's actually in at the end of lap 18. So this is a little bit earlier for me. So this means he's going to have to manage the tyre getting toward the back end of the stint. So wait and see how that one pans out. A couple of cars going by there, Grossell and Bailey Hall and Daniel Cox, so they're all going through So this is going to drop spec to the tail end of the lead cars that are there. And Dane Liccardo's gone for a wild ride, and I wouldn't be surprised if Liccardo's going to come in for a stop here. Sorry to cut you off, and he does.
Yep.
So, you've gone across the grass, you're getting pretty close to the pit stop window, so you may as well just pull the trigger at that point, otherwise you're just burning time.
Yeah, the point I was going to make is that just looking through it, Igmanison, Liccardo, and Specs just rejoined in front of the former. Have both gone down a lap seemingly naturally. I don't know if they've either been, I assume they haven't been in the lane, they've just probably partially through the redress, and I'm going to guess just having a bit too much fun with themselves. They've both gone down a lap naturally to Woodevich Noatara. But Spec also now has gone down a lap by virtue of pitting. That's something to keep in mind, and potentially puts you at risk if a safety car were to come during the pit stop. It's one of those tracks where the pit lane is long enough and the lap is short enough that you will go down a lap if you're basically outside the top 10 just by virtue of pitting. So the important thing to keep in mind is if you're worried about getting them back on the lead lap, you need to make sure you're the lead car in the queue.
That's right. Well, I'm still giggling to myself after your comment there that a couple of drivers were off playing with themselves. So you're going to have to go back and watch that one and just realise what you've actually said. It's almost like an episode of The Big Bang Theory when you have people saying, "You really did have a bell around my neck so you can hear me coming." That's the kind of thing I get from when you make the comments about yourself. You just need to give me that little ding-a-ling-a-ling. I'm about to make a little exception
I think
here.
I was going to say playing. Well, the problem is I can say playing with each other, but the problem is once you've gone down that headspace, there's no option that does not sound exactly the same as playing with themselves. So at this point, people know what I was trying to say. Hopefully their minds are out of the gutter and we can get going with the podcast.
Absolutely. Well, Scott Murrell's the next person to stop, but he stopped at the end of lap 20. So he's the closest one to pin so far in terms of the half distance, and he's actually just been lapped by the race leader. So that just gives you an idea of, as you're stopping, he was probably the better part of a dozen seconds off the race lead, and he's been through the lane and has actually gone a lap down. So he's actually come out in not a bad position, I should say, right behind the race leader, who's probably due to stop in the next lap or two, on a much faster set of boots. And he's going to get a nice little tow here. So this might actually be enough to give him a bit of an insurance policy. He was in that fight with Steele Allison. So this might actually give him the upper hand in that battle for third.
Yeah, generally speaking, unless I know Dev Series actually gets more of it because he gets some of the supercar drivers in who obviously aren't racing who can strategize. Supercars generally, because a lot of drivers are doing their own work, we see the bulk of cars now coming in.
Race leaders
they're not really they're not really planning out where they were to drop in. But if you had someone over your shoulder, the likes of a Rossi, telling you when to pit to drop into a best spot, when Murrell pitted was probably the best time for him because it put him right behind Will, ahead of Noatara in clear air, and importantly, as you mentioned, he's got the tow. He's able to follow Will around, and he's not too far off of Will's pace that he's at risk of getting blue flagged by Taro either.
I think
so this is really going to help him.
We've actually just lost Luke Ewing as well. He just blew his motor off of the hairpin as well. So halfway mark, one of the SES Shogun Camaros is out of business. So that makes life a little bit easier in the pit lane for Luke Speck. There's going to be no double ups and no situations there. Rutledge into the lane in the Dolly's Dream entry. So to Dostal. There's Grossel. So these drivers have all managed to get one lap beyond the half distance marker. Everybody else that's coming out of the lane at the moment has pretty much pitted on the half distance marker. Who else is that that's just leaving the lane? So Foley's in. And there goes the questionable car. We really do need to talk about this. Well, we've cycled to it now, Rhodey. We really do need to talk about this. We've seen Ryan Smith with the Oreo cookie car last year, which I commented at the time that the cookies behind the grill did not work.
No.
This is is this like a tribute to his girl? Is it a proposed girlfriend, or the one that he has the posters on his bedroom wall? What's this all about?
No. It's. I'm gonna have to go off memory because I'm running at a significantly downscaled version of the broadcast. But if I remember correctly, this is Ryan very very proudly showing that he's a fan of Sabrina Carpenter, the young female singer. And I believe what he's trying to get across with this car is his intention or his belief that Sabrina Carpenter should have brought either her short and sweet tour or probably a future tour, given short and sweet in the name implies that she's probably happy with the length that it's at, that she should bring a tour to Australia. I'm not saying just for Ryan Smith, but I get the impression that if she did come to Australia, he would have tickets. But something different.
He wouldn't just have the tickets; he'd have the VIP package.
He'd probably go for the VIP tickets if the cash was on hand. But look, it's not too. It's in principle, it's not too different. Something like the Penrite Kiss cars from quite a few years back, IRL. But the execution isn't bad. But dare I say, the Kiss cars have a bit more style to them. And maybe, to be fair, there's not too many ways that you're going to be suggestive with 60, 70-year-old guys with face makeup versus a 20-something woman who I don't know what she's wearing at this point. I can assume she's wearing something on the lower half. I'm not sure about the top half. The picture is very much intended to suggest that there is not much on her at all. No. But he's done the good thing. He's got a back-facing shot, so it is at least he's not at least going to run into any issues of anything being too far past the watershed. But even then, yeah, a little bit on the. I saw it. I'm just like, yeah, legal, but too much further and you're in trouble.
Yeah. Anyway, so let's just sum up. 1, he wants the tour to come to Australia. 2, he wants the VIP tickets. 3, he does have the posters on the bedroom wall or whatever it is, and 4, I imagine he jacks off every night in front of the posters. So let's just leave that alone, and let's move on to other things. So, in the battle for third and fourth, so that little bit of pitting a little bit early for Scott Murrell actually has given him a net gain over the battle with Mitchell Steele-Allison, to the tune of about 4 seconds, so that's pretty handy for him. But, and I do say this with a grain of salt, but he does have a bit of a mountain to climb, because Steele-Allison will be a little bit quicker at the back end of the stint. In fact, he's picked up a couple of tenths on this lap alone, and Murrell will have to probably play a little bit of defence in the closing stages. He will have some slightly worn or more worn tyres compared to the number 24, which is bearing down on him over the second half of this race. There he was. He just flashed through the shot there. And Murrell's actually gained a little bit of time on Noah Tara, but Steele-Allison's actually taken a good 3 tenths or so out of him on this lap. And actually best lap time there, personal best for Steele-Allison, 52.0. So he's the only one there on that the lap to actually he's just done a PB. So too Brandon Dostal, Lockie Locke, they've all just Daniel Cox and Leonard Grosswell, they've all done PBs on that last tour. And Noah Tara's fastest lap of the race is 51.832, just a 0.03 of a second quicker than Will Devonish. So keep an eye on this one. This battle's not over and done with yet. Same way that the Spec and Ryan Smith battle not over and done with yet. So I must say, well, even though we're hanging some shit on him about the car, he has actually driven fairly well considering where he started. He started 13th and he's moved himself all the way up to 6th and fighting for a top 5 here. And Spec has definitely got to be. I mean, they're in the same sort of channel in terms of the teammates and the stable mates. The cars might be different, but the camaraderie is the same. And Spec's going to have to be careful here. He's not going to put a foot wrong over the course of the next few minutes or so. And both of them can't afford to put a foot wrong, because Brenton Foley is very quietly starting to sneak up onto them. And in fact, he's just set his personal best on the last lap as well. These guys were both in the 53s and Foley was in the 52s.
Yeah, so on Ryan's part, he's just been quietly plodding along there. He's now at a point where it's a bit hard to be quiet given the battle that he's in and the battle that's going to become with Foley on the back as well. The interesting point will be, and we're going to discuss it to a point, but crucially, the lap time difference between Spec and Smith isn't too different. So it's not like it's a guaranteed, I'll let you go through and this will be the way we'll do it and this will be the quickest for all of us. They're really about line ball on pace right now. So I think we're going to see a battle form, and maybe that's going to be the way they want to play things anyway, because it's more enjoyable than trying to team order your way out of a situation. Foley though, last lap and best lap. Last lap he was a little bit slower, but best lap puts him 2 tenths quicker than Spec and Smith. It's not enough to comfortably pull away. But that was 2 tenths quicker without having the slipstream that Smith has got, without having the push that potentially the Spec's got. So that might buy a little bit more, and we've just seen as well in the last lap through, Smith and Spec were a little slower again. Obviously Foley not quite as quick, but Smith and Spec even now getting to the point where they're starting to interfere with each other, slow themselves down. So this will become a 3-car battle probably next lap or so,
Yeah.
and it'll be interesting how it plays out from there.
Foley's starting to get into slipstream range here as well, so he's really closed this margin down in the last few seconds or so. So moving on to the lap times here. So Speck and Smith get across the road. So Foley with a 52.4, and looking at the other drivers ahead of him, 53.1 and 53 flat. So this is effectively, in the next lap, going to become a 3-car fight. Just keeping an eye on the race leader here because he's starting to lapse the traffic. Oh, Leonard Grossel's gone for a bit of a wild ride at turn 6. I think he might have had a brake pedal fail or something happened there. He's gone straight on at turn 6. Wouldn't be surprised to see if he's impacted the wall. I was about to say, Will Devenish has now lapped everybody up to 11th place, which is Bailey Hall as it sits at the moment. And then the next cars on the road for him are going to be, who's he got there? Cam Rutledge and Lockie Locke, who are not too far up the road. Now Cox has gone through and taken a spot from turn. Oh, and then we've got the one of the cars down the back there. That is Marnus, yeah, and he's parked up. Now he's had he's about to say he's waiting for everybody to go through there. That's run a little bit deep. Decided not to come back onto the circuit. It's not the purpose of that runoff area, but I'm sure he'll take at that point in time. And rejoins in 16th place. Definitely been a big fall for him. Started 9th, now down to 16th. Not been the opening race for the Leland Stitch entry.
Yeah, the pace I don't think has actually been too bad. I mean, obviously he's dropped back with it, but a lot of it's just been either mistakes of his own or, you know, the race he had earlier with Ricardo. Maybe it's just the length of the race is kind of starting to blame for some people, and maybe I think, you know, the combination I mentioned earlier, Vincent drivers after the night's done, but, you know, with the bumps, it's maybe a higher concentration load than they were expecting, and that combined with the length of the race is really going to probably become more of a mentally taxing race than maybe some of the physically taxing races that we've had at other tracks.
I agree with you on the mental aspect of it. Like, even I found driving in the development series, it's not so much the navigating the circuit and trying to extract pace from the car. That's all, you know, sort of the natural ability of a driver. It's the mental aspect of, you know, you look at the clock and you think, oh, I've been going for 20 minutes. You look and you've only done 10 laps and go, really? That's how many laps have already ticked off? So it feels like an eternity just because, you know, the laps go by and they don't necessarily feel fast. It's just that, that mental aspect of everything. So Marnus, we were watching before, is going to have a bit of an effort to climb out of the hole that he's in. He's actually 2 laps down. Locke is in 9th, and at this stage he is the last car on the lead lap as it sits right now. Oh, Igmas has gone deep again at the hairpin at turn number 4, so it's going from bad to worse for him. And again looking to see what's happening and make sure that he doesn't rejoin and interfere with somebody. Now, Locke, I think, and I am correct, is gaining on Dostal. So 9th place, number 237, is gaining on the Mustang, the number 76 in front of him. So another battle that we're going to have to keep an eye out for in the closing stages of this race. The other one we were looking at, Foley has actually made his way through on both Smith and Speck in all of this. So I think that maybe, I'm not sure if they've come to blows or something somewhere along the line, or there's been a bit of rubbing or some contact, but we were expecting that to be a 3-car battle, and Foley's starting to try and drive away with it here, if he can.
Yeah, it's maybe possibly, at least on pace, and maybe, no, maybe not. I was just checking to see if he was going to be at risk of catching it. So Larson, in theory he could, but 13 seconds to make up with, well, not as many laps left to go, and given the time differences around the track, I don't think he's catching him. I was just trying to think whether Speck and Smith let him through because they figured, you know, chance of bringing Steele Waleson back to them, but maybe they were just looking at the times and thought, look, we're running pretty good, similar times. Foley is 2 tenths, 3 tenths. Trying to look at the last lap from Harrison, probably, yeah, 3 tenths, 2 to 3 tenths quicker. Might have just outdriven them, but also they might have just decided, look, maybe we're having fun here, you know, we're going to get some good points just by finishing. Foley's not really our class of battle right now, but we're each other's class of battle, so we'll just kind of let him through and, you know, go back to squabbling over 6.
Ricardo also pulling out of the way on the main straight here, let Foley go through. Main straight, sorry, the the straight leading down to the hairpin. It's hard too because like you've got the front straight, which we know what the front straight is here at Symmons Plains. It's where the start-finish grid is, and so the grid at the start-finish line. You've got the back straight, which is what these two are on right now, which is technically what we call the back straight, but then you've got the other long straight, which is the second longest straight, and that's not the front straight. That's just the run. We call it, because we call it the run down to the hairpin. That's really all you can call it.
Recently, I considered that straight that isn't called the main straight to be the main straight because it's this, like it's on the main straight side of the circuit, then it isn't the back straight. But I think one thing that Symmons would improve upon, and you could do it because it wouldn't be the only track with an offset start grid relative to pits. Sandown with the Supercars layout, actually all the cars, or the start-finish line, so the start line at least, is beyond the pit lane exit. And then obviously you have just wasted Bathurst as well.
Ricardo very nearly ran into the back of his teammate there, going down into the hairpin. I was a bit worried because I thought Smith was about to look at pulling a move on spec, and then Ricardo got a bit too close for comfort and had to take some evasive action. Thankfully, he turned to the right and ran down the wall and into the gravel trap runoff area to avoid contacting his teammate, because that would have actually ended up in a 3-car concertina, not a 2-car incident between teammates. There's a bit of dust being kicked up at the final couple of corners here. Now, the other battle we were going to keep an eye on here was the Steele Allison and Scott Murrell battle, and this is now starting to materialise. So Steele Allison has caught Murrell. He's now up to the back of Cox. This is going to get a nice little tow here, and Cox will move out the way and let him go down to turn number 5. Now, will he afford the same luxury to Steele Allison? That's the next question. And he does. So he gets out of the way of the battle. Oh, Murrell, big lock up under brakes. That's going to be costly. Oh, Cox, how on earth did he avoid not carrying in that one? He has absolutely very nearly wiped out a car there. And Murrell, the minute he goes on camera for a pressure moment, has a little falter, and Steele Allison is through. But my goodness gracious me, what on earth happened to Daniel Cox? I think he has gone to the Never Never land there. And yeah, he is officially out of business. Let's go back and have a look at this, because it's been a while since we've seen an incident like this. And how it doesn't contact another car. So doing the right thing here, letting the faster traffic go through and staying to the left of the circuit, just pulls out of it there, goes to tuck back in. That's, I don't know what's happened there. That's almost, he just picked the gap almost so perfectly, and then, walloped the barrier. Yep. Good night. Out of business.
I don't have the certainty, but I feel what it will be is he was underspeeding, obviously, because he lifted out the throttle. He thought, right, I don't know, maybe he wasn't quite paying attention, but basically he broke what he thought was an appropriate amount of weight given the lack of speed, but clearly it wasn't. As soon as he got on the brake, he's realised, I'm not stopping for this corner, and went to avoid Steele Allison, which, credit to that. There was really more luck based. They didn't end up getting Murrell as well, because Murrell was going a lot deeper. If Murrell was on the racetrack for the corner, he would have been perfectly clear. But no, he would have been perfectly clear because he would have been further around the corner. It's only because Murrell ran wide himself that Cox was hitting him. But by the time Murrell made the corner, started understeering, Cox was already airborne off the curb. Anything about it, he was just a passenger for that point.
So Murrell now ends up in 4th place with all of that. Foley 5th, and then Spec 6th. He actually got a little bit of an air margin now to Ryan Smith, but I feel it's only a brief reprieve as they head down to turn number 6. They've got another 3 laps to go in all of this. And Spec a little bit wide as well. And does Smith get the upper hand on the inside here? No, that air margin become useful.
He absolutely. I watched that. He absolutely could have passed him. He decided, no, I'm not going to pass him. So they feel. I think they feel that this is going to be the last chance they're going to have to have some fun in this race. He could have passed him and gained by a second. He broke in a straight line in acceleration zone. He was not going to pass him that way. He wants to pass him. If he's going to pass him at all, he wants to pass him by actually earning it. Which fair enough. But I think very much they're worried they're going to be in the position of the guys around him. I mean, Foley's 6 seconds clear of them, and 7 seconds then to Murrell, who's actually just dropped behind. I think. It was with what we saw. He actually dropped him behind Steele Allison. I mean, you look behind in those battles, but I mean, even then, Leonard Gross was running around by himself. It's only Egmanis and Rutledge and Hall in battles. It's Block and Dostal in battles. So I think they'd much rather be in a battle for the rest of this race than be running around by themselves.
Yeah, so Rutledge, you were just mentioning, has just been lapped by Noatara now, who's sort of buttoned it off here. Devonish has cleared out to a healthy margin at the end of the day. Hall is trying to catch up to the back of camp, so he's only got a lap or so to go. The other battle you were alluding to there was the Dostal and Lockie Lock battle. Lock actually had caught Dostal and has passed him while we've been observing some of the other things that are going on. I did say that he was starting to close that margin down, so the same way that Steele Allison closed the margin down to Scott Murrell and then forced the air up, I imagine Locke has done something similar. Last lap for the race leader in the better part of 38 minutes of racing. I was a little bit overzealous in my estimate. I said about 45, 46, but maybe I was thinking about safety cars here. So Devonish tucked up behind, gives a little bit of a nudge there to Liccardo, and this will be a healthy win at the end of the day for Devonish, and probably a lot bigger margin than I was expecting at the end of the day. I think with all of the pomp and sermon with the pit stop sequences, that's probably played a hand in that. Second place for Noatara. Good drive for Steele Allison to chase down Scott Murrell and put the pressure on. And third for him, so great result for him. I think that's probably his first podium in ASR Supercars for Mitchell Steele Allison. Murrell fourth, so excellent return for him. Sort of goes along with what he did 7 days ago in the development series. Foley recovers to where he started in fifth. And then the battle right to the line here, Speck and Smith. Oh, that got a bit close at the end of the day there, and no, there wasn't contact between the two of them. But Speck 6th, Ryan Smith 7th, and then Locke is the first of the lap runners, 8th ahead of Dostal, and Rutledge held on ahead of Hall for 10th. 11th to Hall, then Grossel in 12th, Callaghan, Liccardo and Egmanis the finishers, and 5 DNFs in there as well. So Cox, Newing, Stenberg, Warwick and McDonald, and of course Collins did not take the start. Race 8 in the books. Be a very short turnaround, I would say, here for all the drivers to get this next one on the road. So good effort by everybody. Mostly good racing there. Couple of incidents that were avoided. Only one or two ones there. So I actually do want to give a bit of a commendation to the development series as well. The last 2 rounds for them have had some fantastic racing, and not a huge number of incident reports to be looked at in all things considered. So everybody has completed that one. Rhodey's busy plugging the points away as we get ready to do it all again for another 42 laps coming up in just a few minutes' time. Rhodey, dominant victory, I think, at the end of the day, it could be said for Will Devonish. I don't think, as I said, I was expecting the margins to be as big as they were toward the back end of that, but it was pretty close for the early going. The pit stops and where everybody stopped and then re-entered the circuit really probably played a hand in that one.
It did, yeah. It's interesting the way things are played out, and I'm surprised to a degree. The race length kind of factors in a little bit. I'm surprised the number of DNFs. A few of them were engines. I know from just seeing the YouTube comments, Steve Roke feels a bit of a turfing played a part in his DNF, and also with Rory not making the start at all. So he's got a bit of work to do in race number 2. But yeah, generally speaking, it was a good race. Good to see at least people had same thing as the Dev Series. Most drivers, I think all drivers had someone to battle with at some point during the race. Definitely would have been some quiet periods for some of the guys, just as the back end of that race played out, and unfortunately for those guys that didn't make it to the end. But I think generally speaking, yeah, everyone had someone to battle with through the race, and it would have made it for a good experience, I think, for everyone, and hopefully more of the same again in race number 2.
Yeah, looking forward to seeing how all that goes there. So, as you said, there's, better part of 20 drivers to jump back into this one. So gives us a bit of a chance to just see where everybody sits after all of that. So 20 drivers into the server. I think the only one I'm just looking to see on the list here is Kurt Stenberg. Yep, he's actually just jumped back in as well. So that'll be interesting to see. I think it's been a while since, actually, I can't remember the last time we saw Kurt Stenberg start off the rear of the grid, Rhodey. He will definitely be one to watch to see what his progress is going to be like. He will definitely be looking for a safety car, no doubt, to help his cause. But it'll be a sight to see him coming from the rear and how quickly he can get past some of the back markers, and then as the competition gets a little bit stiffer, how he goes about passing some of these others. Clever strategy maybe in play for the number one.
Yeah, possibly. I think it's going to come down to just getting passes done early. The thing also, and it leads into what I was sort of trying to finish off in the lobby and race number one, this would be a really good track for moving the start-finish line away from the pits and putting it on what we feel is the main straight anyway. But at the same time, as bad as the first three corners are as first three corners, I'm not sure we want the hairpin as the first corner either. It's you almost want to put the start-finish line on the back straight to have the last two turns being the first two turns, because I don't know. I think it's an issue more with the size of the cars than the way the track is laid out as to what's causing issues on starts. That said, we were better than Dev Series, where we had, I think, a 12-car pile-up. So, yeah, but realistically, that leads into Kurt's thinking. It's going to be wanting to play it safe, play it smart. Probably just take advantage of, obviously, you've got the pace on the guys in front of you. Just, if nothing else, boil it down into a run over the hairpin, because easiest passes will be down the back straight, just out-dragging someone. That'd be the best way for you to clean the gap through the pack, and then might have to work some strategy from there to try and pick up a few spots in the midfield where you start to get guys that are a bit closer to your pace. One thing I will quickly point out now that the points are done, and in saying this, it's not representative of how their seasons have been necessarily, but as of race number 9 of the season, Dan Liccardo and Leonard Gross will now finally have points on the board for this year. Not for a lack of interest from Dane. He turned up for Taupo. We just missed race 1, and something else come up for the last 2 races, but Leda, unfortunately, has had a very busy start to the year, and actually this is the first race night he's down to make all year. So, but good to see them both with points on the board now as well. So we've got 30 point scorers now across the season.
Excellent. So I think there's only 1 or 2 entrants, I think, all year that have signed up for the series that actually haven't scored points. Yeah,
there's only 3 at this point. Nathan Higginson, who is actually on a bit of a sabbatical. He is focusing on the Dev series, but he is taking a bit of a break from Supercars. Pete Thrower, who we wanted to see, I think he's had a few things pop up, and I know he's, out of country tonight, so there was a hope that Tim Redmond could pop in in his car, but apparently Pete didn't send him the passcodes, so that kiboshed that one. And Alex Kiddis as well, who's been aiming to do double duty this year. He was a teammate with Wayne Walker last year. Wayne Walker not turning up this year. Kiddis also yet to make a start this year, and actually we haven't heard much from him at all since registration. Yeah. So we're interested to see what happens with him.
Now that'll be a rule that the ASR admins will be looking at pretty heavily, because the rule actually states that if you miss 3 consecutive rounds without explanation, the option is there for the admin team to revoke your entry. In the case of Alex Kiddis, it's 4. So I would not be surprised to see the number 107 withdrawn from the series and effectively become another guest car at this point. The sad part is we normally do have a plethora of drivers that do make the step up from Super 2 into Supercars due to wildcards. The hard part about this year is a number of the front-running drivers in the development series are actually doing double duty in the main game in Supercars, so it's a bit hard to try and bring some drivers up. I think the only drivers that I can think of that are in that field that aren't doing main game in a full-time capacity at the moment would be Scott Murrell, who's on substitution tonight, Angus Brown, Matt Cecil and Darren Kemp, I think, are the only 4 that I can think of off the top of my head.
Cecil would be a fun throw, because he'd be only the second driver, I think, in the ASR history, at least of my knowledge,
to do all 3. Tyres.
Well, no, not as much only that. Well, that too. I mean, technically, I think I fall under that then because I was Supercars way back before everyone was quick. But importantly, it'd be in line with only Bailey Hall that would have done all three in a 12-month period because he raced Super 3 to the back end of last year. He's Super 2 now. He's got until December to make a main game appearance. It has been a few years, but Cecil did also run main game for a few years. Same time as me. I know he's popped up for quite a few enduros as well. Be interesting to see. I don't think he's actually had. I don't think he's even. Oh no, sorry. He did enter a car last year for the Enduro Cup with Steve Burker, but I can't remember how much driving that car actually got in. I think
Did Bathurst.
Matt drove with. I think Matt drove with Palfrey at. No, I think it might have been Sandown for that car. I think Matt drove with Palfrey at Sandown. I can't remember if they turned up how they did at Bathurst, but he has at least got some experience in Gentry Machinery, so he would be an option at least to come up for some wildcard spots. See how he goes. I think he has gotten quite accustomed to the Gentry Machinery, and there is now an actual jump between the two cars. It's not like years gone past where we're all running the same physics set. They are actually distinctly different cars now.
Yeah. We've just had it confirmed off air as well that unfortunately for Ryan Smith, he has got no Sabrina Carpenter posters. So if someone's watching, can someone please put something in a Australia Post cylindrical postage thing and get some over to him? I'm sure he would very much appreciate it. On to race number 9 of the championship. Now, the unfortunate thing is we actually can't tell you how many races total will be in the season because we are waiting on international round to be confirmed what circuit, in fact, we will actually be going to. The admins have actually done a fair bit of work trying to get a couple of tracks together. There's still some testing going on, so we won't know much more about that. It's round 8, so it's a little while away. But
I've just noticed we've lost Roy Collins again.
So I'm wondering if that Steam VR thing of his is still becoming a major concern. It sounds like it is. We'll wait to see if he puts anything back in the chat. I think he said he was running some sort of Steam VR earlier. We'll wait and see if he manages to jump back in or he manages to pop up in the chat and let us know what's going on. In the meantime, Will Devenish leads us away for the formation lap with Noah Tara right behind him. So the same two combatants that were on the front row of the grid for race 1 are back there for race 2. It's still Allison replaces Kurt Stenberg on the second row of the grid. Although this time it's in P3. Scott Murrell, who started P3 for the first race, is now starting P4 for this one. Brent Foley in 5th, the first of the Camaros, with Luke Speck next door to him in 6th, the SES Shogun number 13. Ryan Smith in the number 16 Spud division from SES in 7th. Lockie Locke starting next to him in 8th. And then Brandon Dostal in 9th with Cam Rutledge in 10th. Bailey Hall in 11th, the bright green number 38. You can't miss that one, with Leonard Grossall having worked his way from the back up to 12th place. So not a bad position to start your assault in race number 2. Darryl Callaghan in the Paint Doctor machine starting 13th with Dave Mercado 14th. Nick Martis 15th with Cox in 16th. And then rounding out the rest of the 20 car field, Luke Ewing, Kurt Stenberg starting 18th, Steve Warwick and Damon McDonald, the first 2 retirees, with engine dramas at the early going in race number 1 this evening. So race 1 done and dusted. Race 2 about to get underway. Devenish was about to say he's giving away a little bit of real estate there, and he's now caught that back up again. So 100 kilometres of racing completed, 100 kilometres more to go, and away we go for race 9 of the championship, race 2 of the night, and it's very much, as we always say, second first, same as the first. Good launch for Noah Tara off the second position grid spot, and already into an early lead here. Underneath the bridge they all run, and Devenish now has to play a bit of defence early on for Steele Allison. Is he going to go the long way round here, or is this a late cut down treatment against the number 15? Takes away the advantage there, and now they set sail for turn 5.
Yeah, a similarly clean run, 2 races but won. The Supercars are not doing a much better job than we've seen even the IRL guys do years gone past. There are definitely a few mirror caps gone flying though. You're going to see the entire field has gotten through on the run down to the back straight. Very busy actually with Kurt Stenberg, who we mentioned earlier, trying to make his way up to the field. He's just past Liccardo and put a bit of a door to Bailey Hall, but actually has run wide and dropped a few spots in the process. So he's back behind Igmanis and McDonald.
Yeah, so he made a couple of spots there off the start, which was really good to see, but he then got a little bit out of control at turn number 6. In fact, there's a bit of argy-bargy going on here. Stenberg doesn't want to get caught up in this. There's some collisions going on between McDonald and Igmanis, and almost in a really difficult spot there. You want the position, but you don't want to cause yourself some damage at the same time. So just got to play a little bit of safety here. Go the long way round, get some insurance on the outside, and command a bit of space. That's what you got to do. Just go the long way round, and then get a nice slick shot out of turn number 4 on this run down to turn 5. So hold Igmanis out wide a little bit, command the track position in the braking zone, and very nicely done there. So Igmanis knows the drill, knows there's no point trying to fight that one. Stenberg up to 14th. So 4 places gained in the opening 2 laps. Could have been a couple more with without the off-track excursion, but slowly making some progress.
Absolutely, yeah. We continue to run through the next car. He's going to worry about this Bailey Hall and Cam Rutten. Bailey Hall, at least, is looking like he's trying to make him earn it, though, which would be good to see. But further up the field, Liccardo's going to run a couple of spots up, as has Roach. So they're both tacked now on the back. Brandon Dalston, who's held positions at the start, which is good to see. Ryan Smith and actually Lockie Lock has swapped positions as well off that start. And a good little battle pack over 3rd place, which is still Alison, Scott Murrell and Brendan Foley.
Yeah, so that's an early going there, as we're keeping an eye here on Grossell, having to play a bit of attack on Brandon Dalston, but some defence on Dane Liccardo. Cuts the avenue off there at turn number 6. Liccardo was looking for the over and under, so got some nice fresh Dunlops on the number 35 there. Trying to find his way through, but no option there. As you said, that battle for 3rd place starting to get rather interesting. So still Alison with a very small margin at the moment, but it's the 3 cars behind that are getting interested in his rear bumper, and it's Foley, Murrell and Luke Speck. And I would say I'd rule out the car in 7th place there, Lockie. He's not too far behind Luke Speck. In fact, getting a nice tow from the Camaro, going up the back straight into turn number 5 and then on to 6. So good early battle pack here. But again, it's all about the patience, trying to force a mistake sort of this early on, because you want to get your opponent to start using up their tyres just a little bit more. Just want to start pressing into those corners a bit too heavily, start to make them want to pit a little bit early. Maybe you can take the overcut scenario in that particular instance. Down to turn number 4 again here, and Foley this time really close to the back of Steele Alison, to the point where he actually gave him a little bit of a shove through the corner, and that will be a bit of a wake-up call for the number 24. He definitely will not be taking this one for granted. Rear shot out the back of car 24. Foley closing up under the brakes here. Where's his strengths and weaknesses? Foley looks like it's through the opening couple of corners, because the margin really starts to shrink going into, the last lap shrunk going into the braking zone up at turn number 4. So some lock brakes and things happening here, and Allison's holding his own this time coming out of turn number 1 and 2. So that means that this time Foley's got a bit of a fight on his hands with Scott Murrell.
He does, yeah, and as he is the last lap through, much better, slightly better first sector for Brendan Foley, but obviously they've swung back the other way now, just slightly with the battles that are happening, and so better first sector now for Steele Alison. And Foley very much not concerned about the 24 more now, because the 31 is down right under the rear wing of 074. Murrell's going to play it smart. He has previously run for Foley's team, but also he has been around Foley a few times on track. They both know how each other race. I think all 3 are pretty sure of each other at this point. Yeah, it's going to be a nice, slow, mature battle, I think, for these 3. That said, good bit of energy in the early race, and as you mentioned, if you can try and coax the guys around you to use a bit more tyre, then it opens up strategy options further down the road. Oh, still Arson actually has just bowled it wide by himself, and Foley's gone wide almost and zipped at the end. Murrell almost got 2 for 1 there, but still Murrell up to 4th, and still Arson now back to 5th.
Yeah, good spot there actually. So we're about to go and take a look at the leaders who are actually starting to battle with each other now, heading up to turn number 6. I was about to say Devonish had closed the margin back down to Noah Tara. So he has he's really starting to put the hammer down there, and then back behind them, Murrell just sent one up the inside of Foley at turn number 6 and couldn't quite get that pass done. So Foley hangs on to P3 for the moment. Oh, lots of lock brakes going into turn number 1 and 2 there. I think Foley was battling to get it stopped. It's been a hot spot this evening for lock brakes. So down the chute again to turn number 4. Still the leaders as the way they work. Foley a little bit deep. This is where, as we were saying before, you want to coax your rivals to start using a bit of tyre.
See in the background, somebody's gone way deep. Couple of cars way deep. Actually, Stenberg, one of them, and Bailey Hall also right down the end of the gravel trap with the hairpin.
Yeah. So Bailey Hall's well off the road here, and I think Daryl Callaghan might have been involved in this as well. We will get a bit of a look at what's happened on the Paint Doctor replay here. So for Hall, he might have actually done this on his own. Where's Callaghan and all of this? Was he actually up at the hairpin? Oh, there we go. So there was a little incident happening there, and then Hall's gone off on his own. Stenberg, was there on his own, and I didn't quite see what happened to Daryl Callaghan and all of this, but yeah, I didn't actually get a really good look there at what happened to Kurt Stenberg.
I've just checked. I believe we lost Callaghan on the opening lap to something. Dare I say engine perhaps than everyone else. I'm not sure, but I didn't catch that one at all. But that was, he was out before even the first lap was over, which relief in a way that he hadn't committed that much to the race. He can very, very easily go up and get a drink and put the feet up after, however Frey made it into race number 2.
Yeah, exactly. Just going back to have a bit of a look here at what happened to Kurt Stenberg. He actually went for a pass on Brandon Dostal, had a fairly decent block up and put him in the gravel trap, so that was on his own. No issues there, no other parties involved, but that actually puts him back in the pack, and it puts him back to 13th place. So he's still gained 5 spots from where he started, so with that little mistake on the books, if he can clear Ekmanis, he will probably start to try and move towards the number 59 of David McDonald, but he will definitely be looking for a safety car. Leaders at it again, going round turn number 5. This time Devonish has the inside for turn number 6, but can't get the drive out of the corner. Turret just gets better drive out there with a slightly better angle. Devonish says, he's got fistfuls of opposite lock going through turn number 7, and that's been a trademark of the return to Symmons Plains for both the main game and the development series. Trying to put your foot down coming out of turn number 6 and then steering it through 7. You're basically steering the car with the rear tyres coming through 7.
Yeah, it's a tricky corner, that one. It's you're accelerating while turning. Very much a bit of a rear steer corner. But also, you almost have to have it do that, because very easy to pick up understeer otherwise, and you end up washing well wide. And IRL, we've seen cars make it to the tyres on the outside or the wall out there. But even then, getting out to the grass unsettles your car. We saw Liccardo spray it across the gravel on the inside of turn 1 and turn 2. That, I don't think was caused by that, but that's an easy way to start one of those instances, to run a little bit wide out of the last corner, overcorrect and spray yourself back across to what would be the inside of turn number 2.
Yeah, exactly. So leaders continue on. Locke continues to hold off the Sabrina Carpenter machine here of Ryan Smith. So this is actually a pretty good performance from Locke. He's picked up 1 spot. Smith has lost it 2 spots at the start here, because remember, he was right on the tail of spec at the conclusion of race number 1. So something gone a little bit awry for car number 60 in the opening stanza of this lap, but I get the impression he's just going to try and wait it out, get to the pit stop sequence, and then maybe put the hammer down a little bit like he did in race number 1, really harass whatever car he's closest to as the race winds down. Did see that again that Murrell and Steele Allison were at it again, and possibly with Speck involved up at the hairpin. They're just a handful of seconds up the road from these two cars we're watching on screen here, and then only a couple of split seconds behind. You can just see them starting to emerge in the background. Is Brandon Dostal, and then behind him Leonard Grossel, who's made up 2 spots at the beginning of this race. And look, it's all starting to concertina up here. So Locke with a little bit of a sluggish run through turn 1 and 2. That checks up Smith, and then it pushes him back into the likes of Dostal and Grossel, who we're on board with now. And he's got full scope and full sight of what's going on. It's like a wall of cars at the moment. There's going to be no way through in a minute. Whoops! As Locke gets spat out the other side, a little bit of contact. That gives Dostal a nice run. You can see here Brandon Dostal now going to go the long way round on Ryan Smith, hopefully, at turn number 5. As he managed to pull ahead, he has. Mirror cap goes flying. Dostal got lost the right side mirror cap. That went over the top of the 666 machine, right in behind the 2 of them. This is going to get ugly before it gets nice, and they're rubbing panels as they go through 6 and 7.
I'm pretty sure they're on the run down the back straight through the kink. I'm not sure if he was forced or if he went there kind of his own volition to a degree, but Ryan Smith was 2 wheels on the 2 wheels onto the grass on the inside as he came down the back straight. It's really not a point in the track you want to be touching the grass. I imagine the slight return of serve out of the last corner was a bit of a response, given he probably felt, and he probably could have been such that Dostal sort of fed him into that position of being 2 wheels on the grass. Adjacent teammate in so much as that Luke McHugh does have a tangential relationship with SES. But at the same time, I don't think they're going to be too friendly with each other, at least based off that last little bit. It might come down, it might not. What it does mean is if they're going to carry on, Grossel's still right there. McDonald's actually coming to this as well, and Lockie Locke is sitting back there from this. What this might also do as well, depending on how further this plays out, we are a few laps off the pit stops, but Kurt Stenberg is 5 seconds back as well.
And not only that, Damon McDonald actually caught up in this whole sequence as well. He passed Lockie Locke, so I didn't see him sneaking up on all things in this battle either. So he's actually made this a bit of a 5-car train now, as Ryan Smith runs a little bit deep at the hairpin. That's going to give Dostal a little bit of a stiff, but he's a bit too far back to really make a fist of it. But you're right, lap 15, we saw the earliest stoppers on lap 18. So keep that little bit of information handy. We'll start to see how everything shakes out in the next few seconds or so. So Foley clearly in third. These two, I'm not 100% sure if they're making any real significant gains. Steele Allison made a very minor gain the last time around, but the lap before that, he didn't make much of an impression at all, so it returned to status quo. So Foley just keeping these two at arm's distance at the moment. At the same time that Speck is just trailing Murrell, there's a bit of I think there's a little bit of just need to get to the pit stop here and then reset and go again. Been quite a hard fought opening 16 laps so far. Murrell, is he just not game enough to go for the pass at the moment, but Steele Allison playing some really solid defence on the run up to turn number 6, just moving the car to the right off the racing line, just sort of stepping about a half a car width to the right, so to the left, just to make it a little bit more difficult for Murrell to find his way through. I don't think Murrell's not sort of game to go for the pass at the moment. He's had a couple of nibbles at some of the passes early on, but I think he's just decided to settle down. He maybe hasn't got the tyres underneath him right at this stage, or they're both very deep at the hairpin, looking for like a real V cutback on the corner. They both did exactly the same thing.
Yeah, I think with the way they've been racing, they're both waiting for that pit stop. We've just seen a bit of something with...
there was a yellow flag up at the hairpin. A couple of drivers were a little bit wide.
Grossel's down a few spots. I'm going to guess that would probably be the result of it.
Yeah, well, actual fact, he gained, I think, a spot out of some of all of this, but there was a little bit of argy-bargy, I think, and a few drivers running a bit deep at the hairpin. Didn't quite get the full picture on what happened there, but Dostal was deep and there was some lock brakes and a few other things going on, and I think McDonald managed to swoop through and grabbed a lot of them. Stenberg actually just starting to emerge in the background as well, so he's moved himself up to position 11. His lap times, the last one time around is a 53.6. So compared to the drivers in front that he's racing, he's actually stronger than him. He's been catching up. Dostal now has to defend from Grossel here, and this all the meantime is starting to push them back into Stenberg.
Yeah, I've just checked, so I knew there's a car missing from this train. It's Ryan Smith. He's now back behind Newing, so I get the impression maybe he was involved with something as well. Probably
might have been the one
worst
ran
off
off
of
the
lot
road.
Of,
the one
yeah,
that ran
probably down in the gravel trap at the hairpin. Would be my guess given the time loss. But yeah, I'm not sure whether that would have been by himself or whether it would have been with help. But I can see the way that Dostal's racing. He's pretty keen to keep the elbows up for everyone where the opportunity arises. He's not making this easy for Leonard at all. Leonard does have comparable pace, so it's not like he's been sailing through. But yeah, definitely making him earn it, which is going to back the pair of them into Kurt Stenberg. But we are, in theory, moments away from seeing pits. We are on lap 19. The halfway point is going to be lap 21. We did see the likes of the Luke Specs in at about this point last race. So far, nobody in yet, but
no.
I wouldn't be surprised for us to be too far off.
Or actually beyond the point where the first drivers came in last time around as well. And we're also keeping an eye here because Will Devonish did make his way past Noah Tara at some point in the last couple of laps while we've been watching all the other battles on track as Tara loses a mirror cap on the Armco exiting turn 3. And we, as you said, are waiting to see who wants to pull the trigger first in terms of the pit stops. I'm guessing, Rhodey, that it's going to be one of these three cars on screen will opt to pull the trigger before the others. They all won't come in together. If it's me, I'm thinking it's got to be Scott Murrell, currently sitting in 5th place. I would be trying to get an undercut here. I'd be trying to pull the trigger a lap now and then find a spot, get into some clean air, and then maybe beat Steele Allison out, because he actually came out last time in quite a nice position. And there he goes. So just on cue, Scott Murrell comes into the lane. So this worked out well for him last time because he came out of the pits and he ended up directly behind Will Devonish, specking along with him. He got a nice little tow, and that actually dragged him, not only got him past Steele Allison, but it actually dragged him further away from him, and it wasn't right until the end of the race that Steele Allison was able to find a way past. So possibly going for a similar strategy again here, but if you like Steele Allison, you've now got to respond.
You do, yeah. So yeah, in that lap was Murrell, was Speck, was Lockie Locke, who's just pulling into his bay now, and also Cam Rutledge in this lap as well. He's coming in. He was the last of that train, so he's going to be dropping a lap down, as will, well, it's actually in theory most of the cars probably end up, well, I think Specs is going to be safe, but the other two, Locke and Rutledge, will go a lap down in this.
Yep, Steele Allison responding. So important the outlap here for Murrell. I did notice as well that he got slightly held up in pit lane as Locke was coming in and he was trying to exit. There was a little bit of a moment. So that'll be interesting to see how all this unfolds, and if that does give him a bit of a penalty to pay because he doesn't get back in front of the number 24. Race leaders are in. That reveals Brett Foley in the lead of this race. He's currently down at the hairpin. We're keeping an eye on this Murrell and Steele Allison exchange just to see where all this ends up. And Steele Allison currently still in the lane, just leaving now. So you'll start to see him emerge any minute as Murrell comes around here. Murrell's going to get this done, I think. He's just going to edge in front, but not by very much. There he goes.
The other question will be, given that they've both undercut him in turn, what does this do for Foley? He's stayed out. He's actually had another lap again, so he's basically, I think, trying to do the inverse of where
he's in now.
At.
He's in now.
He's now just come in. So.
Yeah, so he's actually avoided all the busyness in pit lane, but the question is whether or not this, again, is going to drop him behind the others. Now, he hasn't even reached the pit bay yet. Now he's reaching the bay. Oh, God, did he? COVID must have done something to him there, because I reckon he was about to sail past his bay and then went, oh, holy crap, Batman, and then did a hard right turn.
Yeah, it's well, we know it. I know it plays some mental capacity. I did mention maybe lost concentration in some angles, but also might be a little bit of also just some brain fuzzies at points. Yeah, I don't know. He clearly had to stop for the first race, so he just forgot where he was in the lane.
Yep, he will lose a spot to both of them. So going that little bit longer has had its penalty, but this is the difference when you go a little bit later. He actually hasn't lost that much ground, but he's got 2 laps better tyres than Murrell. He's got a lap better tyres, at least a lap better tyres than Steele Allison in front. So this will then mean that he has got the ability to just push a little bit more, maybe force an error, maybe force a mistake and see what happens. So don't rule out Brent Foley from getting back to P3 after this is all said and done. Speaking of P3, the driver that was in P3 going the longest out of everybody is Curtis Egmanis, and he, I think, is the last person to pit.
He is, yeah. I just want to borrow something actually while we've got him on screen, because there was something I want to talk about with his liveries running for this round, and I assume maybe next round. I think it will still be potentially appropriate given the film comes out in the next couple of weeks. But one thing you can see from a few angles, there is an angle of Stitch, and it has been set up that he is actually biting into the Ford banner, which I thought was a nice little touch. But go look at the livery for Lilo and Stitch, which is the next Disney film to come out. I didn't realise it was coming out, but I suppose the controversy, good or bad, around the Snow White film has somewhat tempered Disney's ability to make news since. But it'll be interesting to see that one come out doing a live-action version of Lilo and Stitch, which is a 20-year-old film at this point. And I didn't see the original, but I know my sister's quite a fan of it, so I'm interested to see if maybe she can give me her thoughts on it if she goes to see it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people are sort of worried about for Disney about how much of a flop it may or may not be, just to, considering, as you said, how Snow White was when they're trying to do a remake. I mean, the same thing could be said about The Lion King as well, but The Lion King's a bit of a classic, so when the remake was done, I mean, I didn't personally see it, but I knew the remake was actually done. But a bit of a gamble, I guess you can call, some of these things, trying to do remakes of old films. Like some things you should just leave lie and see where they end up. Foley's having a little bit of a nibble at Mitchell Steele Allison here. He just had a little moment at the hairpin, so he's starting to push now. And the other thing can be said about Noah Tara, because he's starting to push Will Devonish here too. So this is quite a different scenario for Will Devonish after the pit stops last time. He was actually able to drive away and robbed away to a nearly 11-second win at the end of the day. So Tara making a good fist of this one and really starting to apply the pressure. So some good battles, top 2, and then the next couple after that. Oh, this car backwards in the wall on the main straight. I think it actually might be Dane Liccardo, who possibly is out of this one. So yes, so he is out, and the Paint Doctor replay is going to give us some insight into this one. So this looks like it's all on his own here. He'd just been passed by that battle, so he was very wide on the circuit. And oh, that's a really awkward. So I just had his foot all firmly planted in it, I think. That's all you can say about that one.
I'd almost suggest with that one maybe a pedal issue of some sort, because that's not a point where you go full throttle. And if he'd gone full throttle and picked up wheel spin, he would have then lifted to try and catch the slide. Like, it's gone full throttle to the point where nobody really ever goes full throttle. Whether he slipped or whether it's a pedal issue, I don't know. But that doesn't look natural. No,
slow. It's a bit of a lapse there, I think, as well. As you said, like he was turning in for the corner, and it was well wide of the apex, and it was almost like there's either some sort of pedal issue, or B, stuck, or just accidentally had his foot in it too much. But then you turn it in for it, and you don't actually turn in for that corner full throttle in these cars or in the development series cars. You've got to get the turn-in point right. You've got to sort of ease off the throttle and get the car turned in before you can then start to reapply the accelerator. So that means 4 retirements in this one. Callaghan, who we lost very early on, Bailey Hall down the gravel trap, Luke Ewing sight unseen, and Dane Liccardo in the fence on the main straight. So Scott Murrell's now lost a little bit of touch with Brent Foley and Mitchell Steele Allison. In fact, he's been passed by them both. So he's made a mistake somewhere on the last couple of tours. In fact, it was the last lap. He did a 54.4. So he's run a little bit deep at one of the corners or had a moment somewhere, and both the 24 and the 074 have managed to get in front of him. So that's 1 for Foley. And now it's going to be a straight up fight, I think, here between himself and Mitchell Steele Allison. As there's another yellow flag on the front straight here. It's Noah Tara. So Noah Tara in some trouble, and he's at the final corner doing some lawn mowing. And there goes Steele Allison. There goes Foley. There goes Scott Murrell. So perhaps a mistake, pushing a little bit too hard. Let's go and find out what happened there. Or is there a little bit more to this story? Did he do this on his own? He was actually chasing Will Devenish here. Oh, had a lock up into the braking zone. And there was some contact to go along with it there. So there's some damage on the 15. And Tara hit that wall pretty hard. Surprising that it didn't kill the engine roadie.
Yeah, he was lucky there with how sensitive these cars can be from some angles. But I'm also Will's I think we're lucky to come out with any sort of damage to that one as well, because I don't think Will. I get the impression Will didn't see him at all. He turned in as if he wasn't there, and seemingly no reaction at all to the fact that the motor car was far up the inside over the curb. Similar thing to what we saw from Cox in the prior race, but a different circumstance. There was that wasn't a I'm slower than I expected to be, I'm not sure where to brake. That was a I've just missed my braking point, but still the same reaction of I need to clear the corner to get out of the way. Yeah, it was unfortunate with the carrying high speed that he ended up with contact with Devenish, but also then the intermediate to the fence. But I think he slowed it down just enough to avoid any major damage. But what that has done, as we mentioned, is put him back to fifth, where he's actually almost within the range of expect now. He's running around sixth.
We'll see how much damage he's got if he can make this to the flag, if there's not going to be any more significant impact. Meanwhile, Dostal's trying to avoid some impacts from all sorts of corners here. Did he just get a little bit of a shove there from Grossel? I think he did, who shortcut the course and went across the grass. So that puts Stenberg right on the hammer of Brandon Dostal. So Stenberg having to recover not only from starting toward the rear of the grid, but also from a little off-track moment a bit earlier in the race. And he's now really ducking and diving and left and right, trying to find a way past the 76. And Dostal has got his hands full, and he's got to be able to defend not only from Stenberg, but from Grossel, who is now playing a bit of catch-up again after giving him a little bit of a nudge, doing the right thing by not following through with making the pass, shortcut the course at the hairpin and coughed up a fair bit of real estate. But the prize is there, because if Stenberg can clear Dostal, there's another position just up the road in Lockie Lock. It's not too far in front. Then it's about a 5-second margin to Damon McDonald. So 8th place is definitely on the cards for Stenberg, possibly 7th if he can clear Dostal in a hurry.
Yeah, I was just to say something. Look at Dostal's driving, and it would make sense given that he's been moonlighting as one of the Dev Series broadcasters this year. It seems, I get the impression he's been to the school, or at least taken the Cliff Notes version of the School of Defensive Driving taught by yourself and Darren Kemp, because nobody's getting a free pass from Brandon Dostal this race. Not Ryan Smith earlier, who is tangentially a teammate, and not Stenberg at all, and obviously not Grossel either. Yeah, he's pretty happy with his 9th spot. There's many spots like it, but 9th is his. And he's not letting anyone else take it from him, which would be interesting, because Stenberg's, if you can get past him, he's still within the window to make some spots up. He's got 10 laps to go. He's got the last person I reckon he could get up to. He's still got up to 7th. He does need to make some moves though, because he wants to try and mitigate the absolute boatload of points he's handed to Devenish in the first race. Finishing in 10th it's going to be an improvement over not finishing at all, but still a lot of points left on the table that might become pretty important at the back end of the season.
Yeah, true, but of course the drop round's still to be factored in yet as well. I mean, the margin was what it was in the point standings, but the drop round's not counted into play until we get to about 3/4 of the way through the season, because that's when things typically start to settle down and people know where they are and what's happening. So, right, Dostal has got dibs on 9th. This is probably the best opportunity Stenberg's had. He's got to try and get this move done down the inside here at turn number 4. He's got command of some inside here, so he's got the right to some space. He'll run the 76 wide, and he gets it done.
I think he either got very close to or very slightly got to get a little boot to Lock there as well. He was quite deep, and having Lock there probably helped him to check it up just enough to make the corner. But yeah, a very good positioning, forced Dostal a long way around, and ultimately forced him out and higher the corner. I get the impression that the way Dostal's been driving, at least the back half of this race, he wouldn't have the pace to fight back on even the likes of Stenberg, where Stenberg's at. But yeah, I think Dostal might potentially hang around and see if he can pick up the scraps from whatever happens between Stenberg and Lock. that was a good run actually. He just tried to get him around the outside of the hairpin, but well, actually I say that, he's got a better run off of the corner, and actually he's holding him just wide, and he's just got the pass done there. So that was a lot smoother than I think he was planning for it to be, and crucially what that means is Dostal won't have much to fight with on that. Actually, Dostal's lost a bit of time himself in that last couple of corners. So smoothly through for Stenberg. He's then got 7 laps to try and get to Dan McDonald. He's 6 minutes up the road. I don't think he's going to get there, but Kurt's going to give it a shot anyway. And I can't hear you now.
Apologies to everybody that's actually tuning in at the moment. There's actually a small emergency going on in the household at the moment. So what we're actually going to do is just move the cursor to the race leader and let the race finish out. So I do apologise. This is a little bit unprecedented, and we'll hopefully be back fairly shortly. Rody will commentate, I guess, as much as he can until the situation is resolved.
All good. All right, so yeah, Will's now pretty comfortably got that lead of, it's coming down actually just ever so slight in the last little run, but I think that'll just be maybe a poor run off the final couple of corners. The battle is, the battle that sort of really matters is still one we've been watching all race, or bits and bobs of all race. It's still Allison, 6/10 clear of Brenton Foley, or that's obviously starting to fluctuate as they get through the sectors, but about half a second clear. And then Murrell's another 3 points back. Actually, Murrell's looking at potentially making a move in the last couple of laps here, and you won't see it, but you might catch little slips of it in the background of the angle for Devonish. Devonish actually is about to catch the Sabrina Carpenter car of Ryan Smith. So unfortunately, you're going to have to see that livery again before tonight's out. Hopefully Will's come through quickly, so you don't get to see too much of that. But still Allison pretty comfortably still holding on ahead of Foley. He's got about a 7/10 margin. Scott Murrell, though, buying in very late, which is interesting, actually, given that, as we saw, Murrell was the first of the 3 into the lane. So in theory, Murrell should have the worst tyres, but the counterbalance, you know, we've seen Foley. We know the way he likes his cars to drive. We know he likes the Haley setup. We know that those tend to use tyres up. So I think at this point, perhaps a similar tyre situation for the pair of them, if not maybe even Foley on slightly worse tyres. But they are doing a good job there of just keeping Mitchell Steele Allison honest. He's had a pretty good run, though. He's benefited, of course, from what's happened to Noah, from Stenberg being down the order, from a few of those things. But actually, sorry, I've just been distracted because I've just seen Foley's just thrown it wide at the hairpin, actually just given the spot to Murrell. It wasn't even much passing involved for Murrell. He's just sitting there, putting the pressure on, and it just got to Foley at a critical moment. He's got a good run, though, now down this back straight. He's 4/10 back, so he'll have to try and get back. But to talk about Allison just quickly, though, first podium in race number 1, he's up to second in race number 2. Kind of, to a degree, by being one of the ones that didn't fall. But at the same time, really good run for Steele Allison today. Also for Scott Murrell to get another 3rd. And Foley chugging along in 4th place as well. Obviously, he's won championships before, so 4th place is a bit of a drop for him. But with his performance in Gen 3 machinery, this is sort of amongst his best. I'm just going to skim through and see where the rest of the battles are playing out. We've got a pretty quiet run for the rest of the top 10. Stenberg, we're talking about earlier, he's not making any inroads on McDonald. That's stabilised about 6 seconds, so he's going to come across the line 8, assuming everything else plays out as it currently is. And then he's just got Locke in the wheel track, so he's not really making any moves. And Dostal's back there in 10th. He's sort of lost track of Locke as well. Otherwise, the next sort of battle that's really going to play out, but even then, not quite really. There was a nice little train currently of the other 3 new alternate liveries racing tonight, which is the Sabrina Carpenter car in 12th, which we saw earlier. Kodos Egmanis in the Lilo and Stitch car, and Cam Rutledge in the Dolly's Dream car. And actually, we'll hopefully get a chance to talk about that after the interviews, because there is a special reason as to why Cam's running that car this round. But we are not too far off of the end of this race, and Will pretty comfortably in the lead. The last chance we really want for a battle is to see if anything more is left to shake out in this battle over what would be second place. But the gaps have expanded. It's now 1.3 seconds between Steele Allison and Scott Murrell, and about 1.1 to 1.2 between Murrell and Foley. So that's looking pretty well set in stone. I think otherwise the best opportunity we might have, so Locke is within about a second of Stenberg, but I don't think he's likely to move up too much unless Stenberg's worn through his tyres. But actually, that gap is coming down ever so slightly in the last little bit. Actually, Kurt's looking noticeably slower. Let's just have a look at the timing to see the last laps through. Stenberg with a 53.7 versus a 53.4 for Locke. So he is starting to come back, but he might have left his run a bit too late. He's got a lap and about a half left to go in this race. And look, Stenberg might be the pace might be falling off Stenberg at this point, but he is still from memory ASR's only multi-time Supercars champion. He knows his way around the track. He knows his way around these drivers. If he needs to, he'll be able to put the moves on necessary to keep 8th place. But potentially a little sting in the tail at the back end of this for Lockie Locke. But we will have now started the last lap, and actually we are not far off finishing the last lap. And it will be a perfect weekend, at least in terms of the racing. Obviously, he didn't pick up a pole in either. He did pick up pole. He just couldn't quite get the start to work out. But Will Devonish does come across the line to pick up a win in race number 2. So that's a perfect 300-point haul for the weekend. Mitchell Steele Allison in second. So not only his first podium, but his first second as well. If he keeps that up, he's on for a win next round. Scott Murrell comes home in third. Good run for Scott as well, who fourth and a third. So I think those will be your top 3 for the weekend. And then we go back to Brenton Foley in fourth, up 1 spot as well. And unfortunately for Noah Tara, 5th after that mistake that we saw that put him into the wall. Luke Speck comes home in 6th place. We've then got Damien McDonald in 7th. I'm trying to enter the points at the same time so that we can get a rough idea of who finishes where. It's good to see a finish for Damien in that one. Might be the best improver actually, well, 13 spots. Kurt Stenberg home in 8th. Probably would have liked to be a little higher up, but much better than DNF. Those are 4 points for him. Lockie Locke home in 9th. Wasn't quite able to catch Kurt at the end there, with Brandon Dostal coming home in 10th. Wasn't able to hold to that 9th place either. But a valiant effort, I think, for Dostal. Even if maybe he wasn't making too many friends there with the defensive work. 11th for Leonard Grossel. Good to see that sort of effort on a lack of practice. Just out of the top 10 in both races, which pretty good for someone that missed everything up until and including qualifying. Ryan Smith home in 12th. It's good points for him as well, but obviously not as good as race number 1. 13th is Curtis Sigmanis, an improvement for him ever so slightly, but probably not the race weekend he was aiming for. Cam Rutledge home in 14th place. Good run for Cam, but again not as good as race number 1. Coxey is home in 15th. And Steve Warwick, if one I can find Coxey on the points sheet, there he is. Steve Warwick home in 16th. Unfortunately, a lap down on the next closest car, but it is points for Steve, and he, well, from what I can tell, he didn't get tipped off like the last one. Unfortunately, DNFs then go to Dane Liccardo, Luke Newing, Bailey Hall, and Daryl Callahan. Unfortunately, 2 DNSs for Rory Collins, and if it is related to issues with VR, my suggestion, and it's not at all based on the fact that he's running for technically my team, suggestion for Rory, maybe as much as he likes to have it, maybe worth going back to the single or the triples or whatever he had prior to the VR for next round, and maybe that will sort out some of his issues.
All right, so apologies to everybody. There's been a bit of an emergency here at home, and I'm not was a bit completely unexpected. So just to close things out tonight, thank you to Rhodey for filling out at short notice. There will be no broadcast interviews tonight, so please take care, everybody, and we'll see you on the next one. Bye for now.